The growl of my Pontiac Firebird AM's engine is fierce, a powerful blend of pistons firing and controlled explosions. The supercharger's whine adds a harmonic contrast to the engine's roar, creating a sound that's music to me but terrifying to anyone nearby. It's far from eco-friendly, and I know it. Everything on the car is black, sleek, and intimidating. If ninjas drove Firebirds, they'd look like this one. The speedometer climbs past 100, 110, 120, and I know the road ahead is straight. Even curves wouldn't slow me down, thanks to its track-ready design, far surpassing the newer Firebird models. When I came into some money, I built my dream car. First, I found this limited edition, then upgraded every part: air suspension for better handling, forged internals, a supercharger. Now, it pushes nearly 325 horsepower. I removed anything unnecessary: back seats, carpets, sound dampening, all replaced with lightweight materials. The batteries were moved to the trunk for better weight distribution. The oversized rear wing is also a solar panel, adding downforce and charging the system. The glossy black paint looks great but demands constant cleaning. Dust, dirt, fingerprints, they're all enemies. I live alone and obsess over this car. I have a large, beautiful house in a Michigan suburb that would be perfect for a nice family. That was my dream once. And someday it may be again. But dreams die. Sometimes they wither on the vine, and other times they're ripped, bloody, and still beating from the chest of the dreamer. When that happens, it becomes really hard to trust again. So, I find myself here, many miles away from my home state, driving through a desert on a stretch of freeway as barren can be. As a beautiful moon rises high in the sky, the furnace-hot temperatures refuse to decline. The breeze blowing in through my open window is warm enough to cook with. I still can't bring myself to turn on the AC, but I do turn on some music. Using the steering wheel-mounted controls, I press a button and the car's sync system plays a song. A raspy and rich voice booms from the stereo as a perfect background for my drive. The music washes through my mind, bringing back memories. I turn up the volume and settle in for a ride. My name is Ben Carter, and this is the story of how I ended up driving through the desert in the middle of the night, chasing a tip from the uncle of a woman who left me twice. For reasons I still can't explain, I just couldn't get her out of my mind. This all began about 5 months ago, when I was a completely different person. Back then, I went by Bernard Corey. I was your typical married 40-year-old guy, still head over heels for my Pontiac Firebird AM. Of course, it wasn't the same car I had in my youth. This one was a grabber orange 2002 Pontiac Firebird AM, outfitted with a Roush Phase 2 supercharger and body kit. God, I love that car. It all started on a Sunday morning when my wife Kathy and I were having brunch. She was in one of her "let's improve our marriage by doing stuff together" moods, and that meant dragging me to one of those trendy sidewalk cafes that had popped up seemingly overnight in Ferndale. The town had undergone a makeover. What used to be a place filled with dusty old bookstores and empty buildings had been transformed into a hipster haven of microbreweries and boutique restaurants. Kathy insisted we sit outside, right on Woodward Avenue, in the blazing sun. It made no sense. Why would I want to sit just inches from the busiest street in town, sucking in car exhaust while my legs cramped up from my morning run? There were a million other things I would have preferred doing. To top it off, the place was full of people too absorbed in snapping pictures for Instagram and Facebook to actually enjoy the moment. Years from now, they'd have all the photos to prove they were there, but no real memories because they were too busy pretending to experience it rather than actually doing it. Meanwhile, I might as well have been invisible. All the 20-somethings around us were too focused on their beard-sporting, pipe-smoking boyfriends to notice a guy like me, 40 and practically twice their age. But they did notice my car. They frowned, muttering about how impractical it was and how much they hated driving. It was as if, in their world, a guy like me and a car like mine didn't belong anymore. A few of them mentioned that it looked like the kind of car that Uber drivers who were criminals probably drove. I didn't give a quarter of an eighth of a damn about what any of those inbred, TikTok-worshipping morons thought. Every time I saw that car, I smiled. I was also not paying Kathy any attention at all. While she was going on and on about whatever the hell she was blathering about, I was imagining what my car would look like with piano black SV Series 2 rims. Don't get me wrong, I loved my wife. But we'd been married for more than 20 years. We'd reached that point where we were comfortable with each other and no longer felt the need to go overboard trying to be attractive for each other. I ran and lifted weights, but it wasn't for Susie anymore. It was for 2 reasons. The first was because I loved the way I felt after a good run or workout. And the second was because I had to stay in shape to look good next to my car. Kathy, not so much. It wasn't that she wasn't attractive. but she just let herself go. I guess she thought that she didn't need to work at her looks. She still had the same haircut she'd had when we met. It was probably my fault. Kathy is short and built like a fireplug. Of course it didn't hurt that my Kathy has ginormous melons either. And so, for the past 20 years, Kathy just flips her hair, opens her shirt, and I melt like a popsicle in mid-August. So anyway, there I was on a sunny, warm spring day, sitting in a sidewalk cafe, pretending to listen to Kathy when this shit all started. I heard a sound that, unlike Kathy's gibberish, roused me from my deep thoughts of aftermarket rims. It was the grunting, guttural sound of a high-powered motor channeled through a very loud, possibly illegal exhaust system. The sound snapped my head around the way a Catholic reacts when the Pope farts. My quick action was of course met with abject disappointment as I realized that the beautiful sound had come from a Camaro. But my frown turned upside down when I saw her. No, not her barely respectable bug-like car. Its driver. She'd strangely, come on, we're in the suburbs, but it's a suburb of Detroit, left her car's motor running. She was tall, easily the equal of my 5'10" height. The long hair that fell almost to the small of her back was a rich chestnut brown with highlights of at least a dozen other natural shades blended in. Her car was a vert, and although I hate convertibles, it fit her. Every guy in the vicinity forgot what they were doing to turn and look at her. I swear the two guys at the table next to us forgot that they were gay and stared at her too. She jumped over the side of her car and was striding purposefully towards the cafe we sat in. She pulled on a pair of genuine Ray-Bans, and I swear she was looking at me. But then every other guy in the place was probably thinking the same thing. I felt really sorry for the waiter who'd gotten her carry-out order wrong, because the look on her beautiful face spelled trouble for someone. Her long-legged strides brought her closer and closer to us with every step. And the closer she got, the better she looked. Besides that incredible hair, her face, at least what I could see of it behind her oversized Wayfarers, was fashion model pretty. Her legs were long and well-shaped. I could tell this because her jeans were almost painted on. Her slim hips were beautiful. She had a tiny waist and two small but mouth-watering melons. I was in love. Like every guy around me, my mouth had dropped open while almost every woman in the area was on guard and pissed. I say almost every woman because my Kathy had continued yakking away about whatever she was talking about. I guess in a way both of us were immobilized. Kathy by shit. To this day I have no idea what she was talking about. And me by the sight of that goddess walking towards us to get to the door of the restaurant. Or so I thought. Yeah, I thought that all the way until things got ill. It was all so sudden. There were so many thoughts going through my head at the same time. I was thinking about shapes and how her inverted heart-shaped but perfectly matched her heart-shaped face. I was also wishing that she was driving a rail car, but glad that she wasn't dragging one of those tank-like Challengers around. Even a woman as beautiful as she was couldn't make that work. But all of a sudden she was past the door and right at our table. She smiled at me. It was a beautiful smile. I was so shocked by the smile that I failed to react as she turned and slapped the taste out of Kathy's mouth. She hit my wife so hard that Kathy fell over backwards in an awkward tangle of arms and legs. "That was for my mother," snarled the goddess. She turned to me and with an expression of almost pity apologized. "Me. I'm so sorry for how much this hurts you," she said. "You deserve so much better." And then she hopped over the railing and sprinted for her car. She hopped over the door, Dukes of Hazzard style, and with shrieking tires burned rubber getting out of there. My brain wasn't working at the time, although as an engineer I'm supposed to be pretty quick on the uptake. There was simply too much weird shit going on for me to gain any type of mental traction to make sense of it. I heard the sound of a feminine voice laughing hysterically. I turned and saw the big bearded guy behind me, and in shock realized that he was the one laughing. That brought me out of my shock and propelled my body into action. No one slapped Kathy and got away with it. Okay, maybe she did, but I had to at least chase her. I hopped over the railing and ran towards my own car. I'd seen a couple of episodes of The Dukes myself. I jumped up and slid over the hood of my car, landing lightly on my feet, and after opening the door, threw myself in. As my engine started, every eye on the block was on me. The sound, though musical and beautiful to me, caused a lot of the onlookers to spontaneously begin speaking Chinese. I swear I heard more than one of them scream, as the sound of my engine ripped the tranquil afternoon air. Less than a second later, the same people were covering their ears and shaking their fists in anger as I shredded my tires. My exit must have terrified them. By the time they'd gained enough sense to protest, I was a block away from the restaurant and gaining on that Camaro with every second. Strangely enough, I could still see her bright red paint. But almost as if she could see a flash of grabber orange getting bigger in her rearview mirror, she suddenly turned off of the broad, straight expanse of Woodward Avenue. Knowing the area the way I did, I knew it wasn't coincidence that she turned where she had. We'd left Ferndale, driven through Pleasant Ridge, and were nearing Royal Oak. She was heading for the freeway. She moved into the turn lane and then made a sharp right. I was almost a half a block away, but I followed suit. Once on the freeway, the speed limit was much higher, and I was sure that she didn't give a damn about it. That Camaro would be eating up ground at an alarming rate. The fact that I'd have bet my left nut that my car was faster went out the window. She'd be driving at or above freeway speed while I was forced to drive far slower and weave my way through city traffic. But I had to at least try. Maybe she'd get slowed down by heavy weekend traffic. When I got on the freeway myself, a few moments later the music started. The high-pitched whine of my supercharger always made me smile. In less than 10 seconds, I was already doing 100 and not giving the Michigan State Police who haunted the freeways any thought. I'd driven about 5 miles on the freeway when I saw her. I knew that her Camaro was pretty fast, but, goddamn it, she was only doing 70. That was the posted speed limit. It made no sense. I got behind her and slowed down so I wouldn't pass her and lose her. She surprised me even further then. She actually put on her turn signal and left the freeway. I followed her, dead set on getting answers. Almost as if she'd planned it, she left the freeway at Coolidge. I followed her into a nice-sized park. There were tennis and basketball courts on one side. There was a high school with a track surrounding a football field on the other. She pulled into a parking lot in front of a baseball diamond where 2 teams were playing a game. There were people in the bleachers watching the game and a large hill with a running trail behind the bleachers. The thought went through my mind that it could be a trap designed to carjack me. After all, lots of things pointed to it. She'd smiled at me before slapping the cowboy shit out of Kathy. And realistically, she could have outrun me on the road. She had a nice head start. She was already in her car and driving before I even started running for my car to chase her. And when she got on the freeway, she'd driven almost slowly. If I'd been her, I'd have gotten on the freeway and then got off at the next exit. Anyone chasing me wouldn't have a clue of when I exited the freeway. They could have driven for hundreds of miles and never realized that I was off of the freeway before they ever got on it. I mulled over those thoughts as I climbed the hill she'd parked in front of. A cheer rang out from the bleachers as one of the players got a hit and pelted the ball into the outfield. I paused to watch the kid circling the bases and then high-five all of his teammates. "A baseball fan, huh?" she said. As much as her looks had gotten to me, the voice was better. It was smoky and scratchy at the same time. The tone was like honey, and there was so much emotion in that voice. I wondered why the hell she showed no signs of being afraid. As I looked at her, all I could read in her face was concern for me and anger. It was almost as if she'd been waiting for ya, she asked, reading my thoughts. I was. Why? I asked. Why did you bust that bitch in the chops? She smirked. I nodded. Because if I'd killed her in public, I'd end up in jail or worse. What's worse than jail? I asked. Are your mom and Kathy friends or something? What do you mean I deserve more? Can we deal with one question at a time? She asked. Again, that voice floored me. Are you like a singer or something? I asked. She smiled and looked at me like I was crazy. She took off her sunglasses then, and if I thought her voice was magical, those eyes decimated me. She could have gotten up and walked away and I'd have let her leave. She owned me, and she knew it. Every one of those sappy romance novels Kathy devoured, every love song on the radio, they had it right. No matter how ridiculous I used to think they were, I found myself living it. My mind clung to a single line from an old Jackson 5 song that was totally out of context but somehow made perfect sense to me in that moment. One glance was all it took. That one glance had been enough for me to forget I was married. Enough to erase the fact that this woman had publicly embarrassed and humiliated Kathy. It was as if nothing else mattered. That look held me hostage, and I didn't even want to fight it. I knew I should have walked away. Every logical part of me screamed to cut ties, but there I was, drawn in, powerless. All it took to make me wonder how Kathy had angered her. Let's start with the first question, she said. She kept looking away from me as if she couldn't meet my eyes. On anyone else I'd have assumed that they were lying, but somehow I knew that she wasn't. Hell is worse than jail, she spat. Especially when you have no idea what you did to get there. And my mom and your wife are not friends or something, but they did have something in common. As for the last one, I'd need to show you that. But in order to show you, you'd need to trust me. She looked up and flashed those incredible eyes at me again. I trust you, I heard myself saying, and I knew that I'd meant it. Something inside of me was telling me that she was telling me the truth. Give me your phone, she said. She opened my contacts and added a number, presumably hers, to my phone list. "Expect a call from me tomorrow at around lunchtime," she smiled. "And be ready to meet me," and jumped down the rabbit hole. As we walked back down the hill to our cars, I felt strange. I felt like that awkward time in high school when you're walking next to the prettiest girl in the school, and you hoped and prayed that everyone you knew saw you. Even stranger was the fact that I had never lied to Kathy or kept any type of secret from her before then. But here I was with just a hint from an absolute stranger, convinced not only that Kathy had kept some sort of secret from me, but that it was a pretty bad one and it involved this girl's mother. As we got to our cars, there was a moment of awkwardness. I got the impression that she wanted to say something to me, but she just smiled and put her Ray-Bans back over those incredible eyes. I nodded at that. I didn't want her flashing those peepers at anyone except me. And she did it again. Almost as if she'd read my thoughts, she looked over the glasses and batted her eyes at me. I drove back to the restaurant to find Kathy. As soon as she saw me, she grabbed her purse and came to my car. "What the hell was that about?" I asked her. "I have no idea," she said. "Did you catch her?" I'd been watching Kathy's face as she spoke. You can't spend half of your goddamn life with someone and not be able to tell when they're lying to you, and Kathy was lying. "No," I said, lying right back. Two could play that game. I got stuck at a red light. There was a cop near me, or I'd have run it. Add that to the fact that she had a big head start on me, and there was just no way for me to catch her. Kathy actually seemed relieved that I hadn't caught her. "I've got some ideas. I know every performance shop in town, and someone that I know knows that car," I said. "It won't take me long to track her down." "There's no need to bother," she said quickly. "It was probably a case of mistaken identity. She probably thought I was someone else. I have one of those faces that seem familiar to everyone. Then we need to find her and let her know that you're not the person she thought you were," I said. "I have to protect you, honey." "That's sweet, Bernard," she smiled. "Let's go home." When we got home, I refused to let it go. I kept bringing it back up. Yet again and again, Kathy told me that she had no idea who the woman was or what it was all about. I could tell that she wanted to get me off of the subject when she came out of our room dressed only in panties and a long shirt. She had taken her bra off under the shirt. She called my name, and I looked at her. She turned her neck one way and then the other. Her hair flew outwards and then settled back into place. But for the first time since we met, it didn't work. I'm not sure who was more shocked, her or me. Maybe it was the fact that Kathy had just flat out lied to me. But all of a sudden, I just didn't see her the same way. "Put the water balloons away," I said. "It's Sunday. I need to wash my car." Her mouth dropped open in shock. She was apoplectic. Now let's check Kathy's side of the story. It had been a really strange Sunday. It hadn't gone anything like the way I'd hoped. I'd heard about those trendy sidewalk cafes in Ferndale and had thought that it sounded exciting and like something I could use to put some of the spark back in my marriage. To be truthful, Bernard hadn't ever lost it. He loved me as much as he ever did. He was still excited over the same two things he's always loved. He loved that damned car and my tits. 20 years is a long time. Over that time, we'd lived in 3 different houses. We'd repainted this one several times. And we were different too. We thought differently, we acted differently, and we even looked differently. Again, that was mostly me. Maybe I was the one who'd changed. Bernard still looked almost exactly the same as he did in college. It was probably all of that running he did. That and the fact that he had literally no stress in his life. Bernard only did things he liked doing. He loved his job as an engineer. There were occasionally times when he didn't like a particular project, but overall he was doing what he wanted to do. He also loved me to distraction. I occasionally gave him something that he didn't want to do, but he did whatever he had to do to keep me happy. I was actually the problem. I was never satisfied, but I had suddenly realized that what I had was simply much better than I ever thought. It wasn't just the fact that I'd finally seriously listened to my friends snickering about how much they'd love a chance with Bernard if something were to happen to me. It was everything. 3 years ago, I'd been so bored with my life that I'd taken a job as a secretary. Jason Darrow owned a struggling company that at the time had been on its last legs. In the past year, the company had rallied and was no longer struggling. In fact, we were doing so well that we were expanding and erecting a huge new office tower in the new construction area about 3 miles outside of the city limits. I was one of the few people who truly knew where all of that success came from. And it wasn't pretty. Jason had made a deal with some people who weren't what you'd call nice. Basically, the company was no longer struggling, but it was only because we were laundering money from a bunch of criminals. They sold drugs and did whatever else they did for the money. But all of that money, literally millions of dollars a week, came in the form of cash. With no way of explaining how the money was legally made, they couldn't declare it or pay taxes on it. That meant that they really couldn't use it without alerting the IRS and other federal agencies. So, Darrow took their cash and banked it as if it was coming in from our sales. We then paid the criminals as if they were employees or consultants. That gave them the ability to use their money without fear of government reprisals. Several of them, including their boss, now appear to be legitimate businessmen and even pillars of the community. Their boss, an ice-cold, venomous a-hole named Alaric Steiner, had through his charitable works become associated with the city's mayor. But Steiner was still a murderous, vicious criminal. Darrow had been forced again and again to do things that sickened him. I felt for him, but it was time for me to get out. Darrow was locked in because he simply could not let the company that had been started by his grandfather die. I had stayed this long because for the past 2 years, I'd been having an affair with Jason Darrow. It had started because, as usual, I was seeking what I thought was excitement. But also, because as a woman in her 40s at that time, I'd been feeling unattractive and bored with my life. Come on, I know it sounds trite and superficial, but women are that way. A lot of our self-worth comes from our appearance. Men are simply not as vain as we are. I've seen balding 50-year-old beer-bellied men marching around their houses, shirtless as if they were God's gift to the world. Men do not give a damn what they look like. A nearly toothless, sway-backed, scrawny old man will wink at a supermodel at a car show and honestly believe he has a shot. Women are simply less confident in our appearance. Even the skinny bikini types are constantly assessing what they believe are their weaknesses. A recent internet study revealed that even considering the entertainment industry, more than 85% of the cosmetic procedures done were performed on women. A woman with a huge rack always worries about her face, her legs, and her butt. The way Darrow, a still vibrant man in his 50s, looked at me sent shivers down my spine. I enjoyed the attention. It made me feel so sexy. The fact that my husband gave me and had always given me attention was lost on me. In my mind, I saw it the same way Bernard saw his car. No matter how fast he made it, he still wanted it faster. The fact that there was no place in Michigan that he could legally drive faster than 75 made no difference to him. It was the same with me. After Darrow started giving me that attention and flirting with me, I began to crave that attention. After a day of being stared at and whistled at, I went home and screwed the shit out of my husband. So Bernard got something out of it. At least that was how I thought about it. I also started dressing sexier. Bernard would have never allowed me to go to work in a low-cut sweater or blouse, so I often changed in the ladies' room. I had to. There are a lot of attractive women in our office. And being a short, slightly chunky 40-year-old, I had to use what I had to keep my men interested. Darrow loved my tits as much as Bernard did. The first time he screwed me was a huge disappointment. I was so horny that I could barely stand it. But upon later reflection, I realized that I was just keyed up because of how wrong it was. Darrow was married and had a slightly past college-age daughter. His wife was a sickly, older woman with a lot of health issues. He was horny as hell because he wasn't getting any. I, on the other hand, had a perfectly healthy husband who loved me like there was no tomorrow. And I was getting it and getting it often. All I had to do was shake my head and Bernard would try to screw me. Even after 20 years of marriage, the man loved sex with me. And I guess that somehow my mind created excuses for what I had done. I told myself that after 20 years of being faithful, I deserved to get something strange just once or twice. I also told myself that it really didn't matter because Bernard would never find out. Jason took me to a motel for lunch one day and I gave in. It was the worst sex I had ever had. It took us about an hour, so we weren't even late getting back from lunch. That hour was 20 solid minutes of foreplay. Then he did me for a solid 3 minutes before he was done. We then had 35 minutes of lying there awkwardly, while he told me how good it had been. The whole time I was wondering if we'd both been with the same people. My husband got me hotter by just looking at me than the sex we just had. I was more disappointed than I had ever been in my life. I felt like such a fool. I had a man who after 20 years still rung my chimes and I had risked it all for what? It took almost a month before we did it again. He was ready a few days later, but I avoided being alone with him like the plague. The problem, though, was my ego. I'd gotten accustomed to all of the special treatment and the flattery. I needed it. And so the game began again. Jason flattered me. He brought me presents. We took day trips. And yes, as much as I hated it, we had sex. It never got any better. I tried to avoid it as much as possible. I actually considered the sex as my punishment for cheating on Bernard. At the same time, I served as the confidant for Jason. I was there throughout the entire process. I was there when he discovered that in less than a month the business would fold, and put close to 200 employees out of work. Every one of those employees had a family that depended on them. They all had bills to pay and kids and mortgages. Jason wasn't a bad guy. He cared. He was desperate to find a way out of the situation he found himself in, especially when you consider the fact that he was one of those people who'd be out of work. Jason had bills too. His wife's medical care costs were astounding and growing all of the time. He also argued with her about the business whenever she was aware enough to care about it and realized there was a business, which wasn't often. She knew all about it because she'd once been Jason's accountant. But that had been years ago, before her mind broke down and her body deteriorated. When the offer came, Jason sat me down and we talked about it. There were no other offers on the table. There were no offers to buy part of or all of the business. There were no banks, foreign or domestic, that would extend a loan or a line of credit. So, Jason did what he had to. He made a deal with the devil and signed his life away in the process. I don't think he realized what he was getting into. I truly believe he thought that he'd just get a boatload of money and that Steiner would simply store a few things in our small warehouse. In the best possible scenario, we'd have the business during the day and Steiner's people would be there at night. But they basically came in and took over. Again, I was there for the whole process. Jason and I had to not only keep track of the legitimate business records, we had to keep track of exactly how much illegal cash we were storing. We also had to funnel as much of that cash as possible into legitimate bank accounts. The amount of cash coming in was staggering. There was no way that Darrow Industries could go from barely making a profit to earning millions overnight. So we also had to funnel some of the money into untraceable offshore accounts. Steiner pointed out to Darrow that with all of the scrutiny being placed on offshore finances lately, it would be better for everyone if Steiner's name was kept out of it. All of the records were kept on computers that were not connected to the internet. The banking transactions were done on other computers that did have internet access, but also had very stringent password protection that was changed weekly. Only Jason and I had access. This meant that we were under constant surveillance by Steiner's crew. I was very afraid of those men. They reminded me of gorillas wearing suits. And for some reason, none of them sounded intelligent at all. They sounded as if they'd grown up watching gangster movies. They also had no respect for women or for our regular employees. I tried being courteous to them, but it didn't work. For one thing, they only spoke to themselves and their associates. They treated everyone else as if they were exhibits in a zoo. "Good morning," I'd said once. "Look at them titties," was the only reply. And even then, his reply was directed not to me, but to one of his friends. "Yeah, too bad the rest of her ain't as nice as the tits," said the other guy. That started them off on a conversation about the pluses and minuses of my entire body and face. They had finally concluded that I wasn't bad for a fat 60-year-old hooker. I didn't bother explaining to them that I was only 40. I did notice that morale in the office was quickly declining and that most of our regular employees became more withdrawn. A lot of them, including several who'd been with the company for more than 10 years, found other jobs, or simply left. Things got really bad when Jason's wife came into the office one day while we were out having lunch. As soon as we stepped into the office, not knowing she was there, she started screaming. She'd seen Jason holding my hand and patting my butt, and that was all it took. She went crazy. "So that's where you've been spending all of your time," she hissed. "While I've been fighting for my health and my sanity, you've been screwing this Jabba the Hutt. And what the hell have you been doing to our business?" "I've been going over the sales reports. We aren't selling anything. Our sakes for the last quarter wouldn't cover the payroll for 1 month, let alone the mortgage on this building and our expenses. And you've pretty much shut down manufacturing and moved all of those people into other jobs. We only make enough products to supply 2 or 3 of our long-term clients. If we're not selling anything and we're not making anything, where is all of this money coming from? It almost feels like we've become a front for." Jason grabbed her then and pushed her down into a chair. He put his hand over her mouth and gestured for me to close the door. It was the worst possible time for an outburst like that. One of our sales guys was having a meeting with one of our few remaining legitimate clients. There was also a building inspector in the building and within earshot of her tirade. And to make things worse, we were in the middle of an audit. As I've mentioned before, the turnaround in the business had occurred pretty much overnight. That had raised several red flags. Even though we were paying our quarterly taxes right on time, it aroused suspicion. It doesn't take much to make tax people suspicious. 2 years of paying late and not having much in profits to declare, followed by an immediate bounce back to the highest level of sales we'd ever had, is a good start. When you follow that with a quarter that is higher than the business has ever recorded during a time when similar businesses are struggling, will make anyone suspicious. The tax guy was no dummy. From the way he looked, we all knew the tax guy knew something. In the end, Steiner saved us. As the tax guy gathered his things, one of Steiner's smoother lawyers, on orders from his boss who again stayed hidden and out of it, asked the tax guy into an office. From what I understand, it was a masterful performance. It was partially smooth legal maneuvering, partially veiled threats against the tax man and his family, and a huge amount of bribery. Tax people are among the lowest paid of civil servants. The man had a family that he loved and cherished. By going along with the program, not only would they stay healthy, the tax guy would earn more than double his annual salary. It would all go into a secret account that couldn't be traced back to him. It was done that way because tax people are under a lot of scrutiny, and deposits into his regular bank account might arouse suspicion. We had a meeting the next day to discuss it. I wasn't actually at the meeting, but Jason had instructed me to listen in over the intercom just in case it went badly. If he mentioned certain keywords during the meeting, it meant things were going south, and I was to leave the building immediately and call the police on my way out. During the meeting, the usually controlled and calm Steiner screamed at Jason as if Jason was a child, and a very stupid one at that. Jason was humiliated, threatened, and I'm sure I heard the sound of someone being slapped several times during the conversation. But never during the meeting did Jason utter the keywords. On his way out, Steiner did praise Jason for the smoothness of the operation. He was proud of how much money they'd been able to legitimize. He and his upper echelon associates had been able to vastly improve their standard of living with what appeared to be purely legal money. His new plan was to expand the operation and make Darrow a far bigger company. That was when he announced that we were breaking ground on a much larger new building on the outskirts of the suburbs. It would be called the Darrow Center and would have restaurants, stores, and other small businesses on the first 2 floors, with the new Darrow offices and operations in the upper floors. The basement and sub-basement levels would be storage for the insane amount of cash that Steiner's not-so-legitimate businesses accrued. But he would also store drugs and other contraband there. The plan was that the Darrow Center would do for other criminals in the state, and possibly the country, what we had been doing for Darrow. We might become the biggest money laundering plant in the nation. And of course, Steiner would get a healthy fee. Jason would also become much richer for his part. But Jason had to do something about his wife. Losing the legit customers who'd heard her rant meant nothing. Having to bribe the building inspector and the tax man could have been problematic had they not been greedy enough to accept bribes. Jason was told that if he didn't do something about his wife, Steiner would have someone else handle her. She had always been in and out of hospitals as it was. She'd also spent some time in behavioral institutes, but those stays had been mostly due to problems spurred on by addiction to the medications that her doctors had overprescribed for her health problems. To keep her alive, Jason had, with Steiner's help, agreed to have his wife committed. On the way out, Mr. Steiner spoke to me for the first time. I was going over figures from some of the legit accounts as he and his flunkies walked out the door. The man was smooth as silk. He looked like a politician. If I hadn't just heard him screaming at Jason and slapping him like he was a disobedient child with an abusive parent, I never would have believed him capable of it. I had literally heard him imply that if Jason didn't get his wife out of the way, she probably wouldn't be alive to risk their operation. I wouldn't have believed it. "Mrs. Quarry," he said. I looked up into his smiling face. "Mr. Darrow just informed me of how fine a job you're doing. From what he says, you're getting a big raise. Congratulations. Keep doing what you're doing and have a great day." If I hadn't known how evil he truly was, he'd have made my day. But since I did know, it scared the shit out of me. Steiner was a textbook sociopath. Jason put his wife in the best specialty nursing home he could find. The place looked like a 5-star hotel. She had 24-hour room service and around-the-clock medical attention. She could do any and everything she wanted except leave. From what he told me, the captivity, and that's what it was. The poor woman was in prison, slowly got worse. She tried to sign herself out as she'd done in the hospitals and other treatment facilities she'd been in over the years, and found out that she couldn't. From what Jason told me, it drove her over the edge. Jason himself was burdened with guilt, and he wasn't far from that edge himself. She started trying to call people she knew, and some of her few relatives, to tell them what was going on. A couple of them tried to visit her. The staff was very professional. They explained how she had her good days and bad ones. On the good days, they explained, she was perfectly normal and couldn't understand why she was there. On the bad ones, she ranted and raved and practically peed on the floor. A few videos taken when she was really angry at being told she couldn't leave sealed the deal. Seeing her attacking the nurses convinced her friends that she couldn't be let out. The result of that exchange was that Jason had to take her phone away from her. The problem was that he didn't take away her tablet. He thought she only used it for reading books. Jason didn't realize that she could use it for email, and she got a message out to the worst possible person. The message was never returned, though. A member of the staff of the facility noticed the tablet, probably the same day the message was sent, and took the device from her. He gave her another identical tablet that didn't have active Wi-Fi. The original message hadn't been destroyed, though. It had been sent, but it got hung up in the device's messaging queue, and hours later it went to its intended recipient. Unfortunately, she was away on a project and didn't get the message until a week later. A few days after the message incident, Jason's guilt got to him. He decided that he had to try to make peace or some kind of deal with his wife. But he was too late. She'd taken all of her medications at once and gone to sleep, never to awaken. Jason freaked out and almost had to be hospitalized himself. In his grief, he could barely function. So during that time, I was the one who had to give Steiner's people access to their hidden funds and arrange transactions. I also had to keep up a running account on how much was there and how much physical cash there was on the premises. That was important because those men were, after all, criminals. There were a couple of incidents where a count revealed that there was money missing. What none of the men, except for Steiner's two very closest allies, knew was that the money room was under 24-hour video surveillance. So being the type of men they were, a couple of them tried taking some of it. Unfortunately, I was involved. It had been my records that showed the missing money. When you're talking about a literal pallet full of bundles of illegal bills, $50,000 or $60,000 doesn't seem to mean much. But Steiner was a worm to the nth degree. He did something that businessmen have done since time began. He called a meeting. He called all of his men together in Jason's office. I was there too. He'd insisted on it. I was scared shitless. Imagine a frumpy 40-something woman surrounded by huge, steroidal gangster types. There was also Steiner, the smaller, game show host from hell that exuded far more menace than any of the gangster gorillas. Steiner directed all of his questions to me, as if I was the one on trial. The gorillas salivated at what they thought was about to happen to me. "Mrs. Corey, how did you come to suspect that some of my money was gone?" he asked with mock politeness. I explained how we cataloged every single bill that entered the facility and how they were bundled and stored. I also explained that each pallet was sealed with a certain number of packets of bills so they could quickly be counted from a distance. I explained that there were 6 bundles or $60,000, with 1 bundle taken from each of 6 pallets. "So you went down into the storage facility and," he began. "No," I said quickly. "I'm not allowed down there. I can't get down there because only you guys have keys and—" "And what?" he yelled. "I think there's a rat down there," I whined. They all laughed. "Somebody went down there," he screamed, stopping the laughter. "Somebody went down there and stole some of my money." The entire room went quiet. "So, let's find out if my squeamish and terrified little accountant here is lying to us," he said. "How many of us think this bitch is lying to cover up the fact that she stole my money herself?" Not one hand went up. "Why don't you think she's lying?" he asked the giant man near him. The man looked big and extremely menacing. "I think she really is scared a rat," he said. Although the man was as big as a house and at least 30, he sounded like he had the mental level of a 12-year-old. "My ma is about her age and she's scared of rats too," he said. "Every time she even thinks she saw one, she freaks out." "Thanks," said Steiner. But the gorilla, unused to being in the spotlight, kept talking. "There was this one time I had to go over to her place in the middle of night because she saw a mouse and climbed up onto a table and wouldn't come down until I got there," he laughed. "It was only a little mouse. I cornered it and smashed the little maggot with my fist and—" "Shut up about mice," screamed Steiner. He snatched a remote control off of the table and pressed a button. Several high-def monitors clicked on. He started scanning through the last few days until he saw movement. He stopped then, and the amazed gorillas gasped in awe. "That's the vault," said one. "It ain't no vault, dummy," said another. "That's just what we call it. Whatever we call it." "What are Fritz and Danny doing in it?" asked a gruff voice. The 2 figures on the screen quickly ran from pallet to pallet, grabbing a bundle of bills from each one and stuffing them in their pockets. Every eye in the room turned towards 2 men. "I was going to pay it back," said one. "I still have all of it," said the other. "I didn't use any of it. Not a dime." The remaining gorillas attacked the 2 men without mercy. In less than 5 seconds, they'd been beaten so brutally that neither could stand. A calm-appearing Steiner walked over to the bloody, barely breathing bodies. "You're fired," he said calmly. "And if you break your confidentiality agreement in any way, it will negate your severance package." He turned towards the other guys. "Get them out of here," he said. He turned to me, and with a smile as broad as if he'd just won the lottery, spoke to me. "Here," he said, handing me a thick wad of cash. "In our business, trust is everything. I wish I could give you some time off to get over that unpleasantness, but with Jason out, you're in charge." "But I mean there are managers and—" I sputtered. They're sheep, he grinned. Not a single one of them knows what we really do here. But don't worry, they know who's running the place. As usual, he left for wherever it was that he did whatever he did. There were as usual a few of his guerrillas left around the place. They sat at desks and pretended to work on their computers like everyone else, but what they really did was watched what went on. They didn't avoid the real workers, but they didn't socialize with them either. I began to see them for what they were. They were sheepdogs. Their job was to keep the flock safe and secure and make sure none of the sheep went anywhere they weren't supposed to go. There were two of the biggest of them stationed near the door to the vault. Unlike the others who wore suits, these two looked like maintenance men. The biggest difference was that they didn't do any type of maintenance. They basically maintained the door to the room we called the vault. Most of the regular workers thought that the building's furnace and AC units were there. The AC unit was on the roof. The basement where the vault was located actually divided into two huge rooms, one of which actually did contain the furnace, so there was somewhat of a basis for the idea. I never took the money Steiner had given me home. I had no way of explaining it to Bernard. I did open another bank account and deposited the money in it. The next few days went somewhat smoothly. Jason came back to work, whether on his own or from being urged. I never asked, but things continued. It was about 2 weeks after Jason's wife passed that things changed. That day Adriana showed up. She scared the shit out of Jason. Adriana was Jason's daughter. She was 27 or 28 years old and had been away doing post-collegiate studies in civil engineering. Adriana had been helping to create the infrastructure and bring a semblance of civilization to small South American cities that had been destroyed by natural disasters. Jason had no idea that Adriana was coming home. Her arrival and announcement that she intended to work in her father's company hit us like a thunderbolt from the blue. Adriana's very presence threw things into an uproar. She was tall for a woman, but very feminine and crazy hot without trying to be. All of the male sheep fell in love with her instantly. Even the gorillas were struck by her. Steiner told them to stay away from her and to treat her the same way they treated me. He told Jason to keep her out of the operations at first and to bring her along slowly. I guess that meant that eventually Adriana would be brought into things. I think Jason hated the idea. He kept trying to persuade Adriana that with her education she was far overqualified for anything we did. I think Steiner wanted Adriana there as another bargaining chip to use against Jason if necessary. Adriana and I got along like, well, she treated me like a turd in the swimming pool. I had bent over backwards trying to be friendly with her, but I think she knew from the beginning, or perhaps from listening to office gossip, that something was going on between her father and me. I think that my biggest mistake was in underestimating Adriana. I looked at her the first 2 weeks that she was there and saw a smart, pretty, inquisitive, but very capable young woman. I hoped that we could be friends and she could be someone, besides Jason, that I could talk to about the hell my life had become. What I didn't know, no one did, was that Adriana had already known more about what was going on with the business than anyone had given her credit for. She was already working on a plan of her own. That Sunday morning was supposed to be the beginning of my new life. I intended to reconnect with my husband and get out of the business once and for all. I wanted to get Bernard to take a transfer to another state so we could leave all of that shit behind us. People in his company transferred in and out all of the time. Sitting down and thinking about it had also made me realize that Bernard and I had been drifting apart. Most of it was my fault. I'd come home so stressed out from work that I immediately went to bed, leaving Bernard on his own. That Sunday brunch was supposed to be a new beginning for my husband and me. It did turn out to be a beginning of sorts. I had always managed to keep my home life and work life separate, but Adriana changed all of that. From the second she got out of her car, my two lives collided. I thought running into her was a coincidence. I thought that more than likely she'd ignore me or pretend she hadn't seen me. At the very worst, she'd come over and grudgingly say, "Hi," and I'd introduce her to Bernard as someone I knew from work. But Adriana, of course, had other ideas. I have no idea. Well, some idea why she did what she did, but there seemed like there was something I was missing. Maybe we were all missing it. I tried to get Jason on the phone while Bernard drove off, chasing Adriana's car. I was instantly afraid of that, but at the same time I was happy. Bernard running off to defend me meant that we were still okay. When Jason answered, I poured it all out. "Kathy, why are you calling me on a Sunday?" he asked. "Is your husband out in his car, and you want to meet me somewhere for a quickie?" "Jason, Adriana just showed up at the restaurant where I was having brunch. She just walked up and slapped me for no reason. She screamed something about her mother." "I'll talk to her," he said. "Where did she go?" "She drove away. My husband was chasing her," I said. "Well, good luck with that," he laughed. "He'll never catch her. That car of hers is a rocket." Well, Bernard's car is a starship, I hissed. We'd both better hope he doesn't catch her. If the two of them get a chance to talk? I get it, he said. I'll call her now. Luckily, Bernard didn't catch her, but knowing my husband the way I do, I could sense that something was off with him. An hour later, I was lying on my bed, alone, wondering how I'd gotten in this kind of trouble. In the entire time that I'd known him, even before we were married, Bernard had never turned down sex with me. It was not a good sign, and I was hurt by it. Now let's check Adriana's side of the story. Monday morning came without a warning. I was full of a nervous energy that just wouldn't go away. I threw on a baggy old pair of sweatpants and a hoodie and went out for my morning run. I couldn't shake it. The feeling that things were spiraling out of control. I had, with help, put this plan together quickly. For the most part, it was going off as planned. For the past few months, I'd been with a large group of UN workers in Bolivia. There were doctors, nurses, and other medical staff, as well as carpenters, builders, and a few engineers. When the message from my mom came, I dropped everything to fly home. My mom had begged me to come home because, according to her, my father had gone crazy. She told me that he had her put away to silence her. That was all the message had said. She'd also emailed me that she'd given an envelope to one of the nurses at the home. I was to speak to the nurse and give her $500, but only if the envelope was still sealed. Before I went home to my parents' house, I stopped at the facility my mom had been in to get the envelope. I read it and cried my eyes out. For most of my life, my mother had been my rock. I remember her telling me stories of the way she felt the first time she saw my father. He was a bit older than she was and was far too serious. She often said that the legacy of continuing the business that his grandfather had begun and his father had maintained to pass on to future generations weighed too heavily on a man who was only halfway into his 20s. But she saw the strength of the man beneath the burden. She saw his kindness and his compassion. She knew his spirit even better than he did. From that moment, nothing mattered. Fortunately for her, she'd grown up around his family. Her own father worked for his father's company, so she got to see him on a regular basis. Even at 16, she felt something between them. He dated women his age, or tried to. She ruined every relationship he started. She chased him and flirted with him almost obsessively until she turned 18. Then she got serious. They were married before her 19th birthday. She did everything she could to both help him and to keep him happy. During her school years, she'd studied accounting and had a keen mind for the subject. She often went over the company's book and saw things that even their staff accountants who managed the records sometimes missed. It was as if the numbers in their neat columns and rows sang to her and told her the story of how the company was doing. Unfortunately, she was a frail flower and childbirth took a lot out of her. She struggled with health issues for the rest of her life. Physically, she was frail and took a long time healing from her numerous maladies and afflictions. Mentally, she came and went. She had her good days when her mind was as sharp as ever and her bad ones where she could barely remember her own name. But she always remembered my father. To her, their very hearts were linked. So, a few weeks ago when she had one of her rare double-doubles a day when she felt good both physically and mentally, she decided to go and visit my father at work. When she got to his office, he wasn't there. She took a look at the company's accounts on his computer and nearly went into shock. It had been almost a year since she looked at the company's finances and things had been dire. Her husband had barely been able to keep the company afloat, but things no longer made sense. As she checked bank records, the company was making large deposits. Not only was payroll being met easily, they were paying bonuses. On the other hand, they weren't spending nearly as much as they usually did on raw materials or production costs. It made no sense. When she checked sales figures and cross-checked incoming revenue, the numbers began to sing to her as they always had. There was a large amount of money going out, but almost none coming in. According to the books, based on production numbers and sales, the company should have collapsed months before. There were also accounts that she couldn't access. There were accounts in banks that she had never heard of. She also found a second set of books. In the second set of books, the production numbers and sales figures were much higher. The deposits to the banks seemed to fit these numbers, but alarmingly, the records continued months ahead of where they currently were. How the hell could anyone write down the sales figures for December and June? How did they know how much they would sell? She realized that the second set of books were fakes. They were probably made up in case the company was audited or investigated. They would just pull out the figures up to the current month to satisfy the auditors, and everyone would be happy. She suddenly realized that her husband was doing something illegal. His family business was being used as a front or some sort of shell company. But before the numbers could sing any more of their song, her husband came into the office. He was laughing and happy again. He stepped into the office without noticing her behind his desk. He closed the door and started mauling some short fat woman. She just let him do what he wanted. Her face stayed blank. It was as if she got no pleasure from what he was doing, but she was used to it. She didn't even seem to enjoy it. If the woman had somehow fallen in love with Jason, it would be one thing, but this woman clearly wasn't. That made it much worse and made her just a nasty fat hooker. Pain flashed through her as she looked into her husband's eyes. She saw it all. The link between her and my father told her everything she needed to. Not only was he screwing that fat hooker, he'd gone to bed with criminals in order to save his company. She began screaming at the top of her lungs. The next thing she remembered, she was in a new facility, but this time she couldn't leave. She wrote down everything she remembered about the situation and left it in the envelope for me. Losing her freedom drove her out of her mind. But the thing that pushed her over the edge was the thought of losing my father. He was the only man she'd ever loved. She just saw no point in moving on. I had often wondered how my mother could feel so completely besotted with my dad. I mean, he was just a guy. At 27, I knew lots of guys, but not one ever made me feel half of that. Until I looked into Bernard Corey's eyes. It wasn't actually something I could put my finger on. It was a kindness in his eyes or something. I just couldn't figure it out, but I could feel it. From the second he walked up that hill and looked at me, I knew what my mom had felt, and the plan changed. That was a big part of my nervousness. I was excited about getting a measure of revenge on my ex-father and the others who'd goaded my mother to her death. But I was also excited by the thought of seeing Bernard again. I'd done my research. I guess in a lot of ways being attracted to him made sense. We were a lot alike. We both loved cars to an alarming degree. We were both engineers. He was a mechanical engineer. I'm a civil engineer. That means our thought processes are a lot alike. Maybe that was why he'd listened to me the day before. We had both been trained to confront a problem by investigating it, finding out the nature of the problem, finding the source of the problem, and then finding a solution to the problem. I want to believe that he had also been as attracted to me as I was to him. I know that it will take time for him. He has to get over that hooker he's married to. He has some loyalty to her because they've been together for so long. I'm hoping that will change when he finds out that she's been cheating on him for a long time. I finished my run even more keyed up than I was when I started it. I had several parts of my main plan and several levels of acceptable outcomes. My father had to be punished for what he'd done to my mother. That was a must-have. As bad as the criminals were, they were nothing. My father's business had been failing before they entered the situation. Bernard's wife was far more important to me than the goons were. She had somehow taken my father away from my mother. Beside the fact that she was married herself, she knew that my father was married and went after him anyway. I cannot for the life of me fathom why. Her own husband was younger, more dynamic, and better looking than my father was. The information I got even showed that with my father's business failing, Bernard had a better and more stable income than my father did. My main plan was to drive a wedge between my father and the gangsters. I was sure that I could do that. I had also planned to ruin the hooker he was sleeping with by driving a wedge between her and Bernard. My plan for that was by doing what I intended to do today. I was going to let him know that she was cheating on him, but my plans for that had changed the moment I met him. I was still going to do it, but I intended to be there to pick up the pieces afterwards. I told myself that ending up with Bernard would hurt her even more. But deep down, I knew that I wanted him no matter what. I dressed in one of my usual business outfits. When I went to work, I was all business. I never made it a point of showing off my body. Work was all about work. No one would ever take a woman seriously if she showed up for work showing off her assets. That just sent the message that she was at work for purposes other than work, and they usually ended up getting it. As I pulled into the parking lot behind the building where the employees parked, I was nervous but excited. I made a quick phone call on my cell. "It's me," I said. "Are we a go?" "Definitely," replied a voice. "Don't start your play until you hear the signal." I went into the office and watched everyone going about their jobs. Over the past couple of weeks, I had established myself as my father's assistant for the normal business operations. I had become a friendly face to the salespeople who no longer needed to sell anything, and to the secretaries who typed the same reports over and over again. I was also a sympathetic ear for the managers who managed pretty much nothing. My father came in and smiled at me. "Adriana, honey," he began. "We need to talk." "Yeah, Dad," I said. "I already know about you and that hooker, but we're at work. Save it for tonight. I'll come by your house." "Honey, it's your house too," he said sadly. "It doesn't feel like it," I said. "I don't want to go anywhere that you—" "She's never been to the house," he said. "At least not yet." He noticed my reaction to that statement. His face changed. "Honey, you have to understand," he said. "I loved your mom with all of my heart. But those last few years were really bad. She couldn't. Men have needs, Adriana. And nobody got hurt. It's no big deal. I just looked at him as if he was insane. My father was clueless. Something had broken inside of him. Whatever it was had rendered him unable to see beyond the length of his own Johnny. Lots of people had been hurt. Bernard's marriage had pretty much been destroyed. Not that I was overly broken up about that, but I felt badly about the pain he was going to feel in less than an hour. My mother had been so badly hurt by it that she hadn't been able to live with it, and I had lost all respect and feeling for my father. Honey, I want the two of you to get along, he said. What's this I heard about you hitting her? I thought we were going to talk about it later, I said as I walked away. I turned and almost walked right into her. She was as usual running after my father. Good morning, Adriana, she said. She looked at me as if she was expecting something. She had just sealed her fate. I realized then that she told my father about what happened, and he'd probably told her that I was going to apologize or something. I smiled as broadly as I could and spat, "Screw you, you clueless old hooker." My voice was low enough that only she and I heard it. Anyone watching would have assumed that we were exchanging pleasantries. But she knew that things between us were never going to improve. Now let's see Kathy's side of the story. I was already upset when I got to work that morning. There were two things I had to talk to Jason about. The first was the situation between his spoiled daughter and me. The second was that I wanted to quit. I just couldn't stand working around Steiner and his men. Over the phone the previous night, Jason had assured me that he would talk to Adriana and things would be better. But as I parked my car this morning, I noticed that the sign in front of my parking spot had been defaced. Overnight, someone had repainted the sign. When I first got the sign, I'd been so proud that I looked at it every day. But after a while, the thrill was gone, so I barely noticed it. That morning as I parked, I heard laughter. One of the secretaries covered her mouth and ran into the building. A guy I know came over and asked if I was sure that I wanted to park there. I park there every morning, I said. It's my spot. Okay, he said, shaking his head. I looked back at my car wondering what was going on. Maybe I had parked in front of the garbage dumpster or something. I finally saw the sign. It now read, "Reserved for the company hooker." I grabbed some paper and a roll of tape from my bag and covered the sign. Once I got into the building and off of the elevator, things only got worse. I saw Jason talking to Adriana, and they seemed to be in complete disagreement over whatever they were speaking about. I was pretty sure it was my apology. I decided to be the bigger woman and be cordial to her whether she apologized or not. I wished her a cheerful, "Good morning," and she went nuts. Her face morphed like some kind of movie special effect and ended up with the scariest smile I've ever seen. "Screw you, you're clueless old hooker," she hissed. For a second, I was actually afraid that she'd hit me again, but she stalked away angrily. I looked around for Jason to tell him that whatever he had said to her hadn't worked. I found him in the office. "Jason, your daughter is crazy," I whined. "She just insulted me right out in the office." "Give it some time," he whispered. "I just planted a seed in her mind. It may have upset her, but in the long run it's a big step towards her getting accustomed to the idea of us being together." "Huh?" I said in confusion. "As soon as we give her some time to adjust to the situation, you can move in with me," he said. "And after a suitable mourning period, we can get married." Shock went through me. I almost laughed. "Are you out of your mind?" I asked. "I love my husband. There's no way that would ever happen." "If you love him so much, why are you sleeping with me?" he asked. I had to be honest with him. "Jason, you're a nice guy," I began. "But I've been married for a long time, and things were a bit dull at home. So, I took a job to get out of the house. And with your wife being sick and everything, well, it happened. And it kept on happening," he said. "And it was really good." I didn't have the heart to tell him that the sex between us was always awful. The door was open just a crack, and I saw Adriana talking on her phone. "I came in here to talk about your crazy daughter," I said. "We can talk about the rest of this later." "Just go do some work," he said. From the way his voice trembled, I could tell he was upset. I went into the office next door to ours where we kept the computers and the record of our off-the-book transactions. I opened the safe and took out the flash drive that gave us access to the accounts. The accounts were numbered and accessed by extremely long alphanumeric passwords. The flash drive was the key to the system. All of the banks, accounts, and passwords were on the flash drive. We kept records of the transactions on computers that were not accessible via the internet, but we made deposits and transfers on the computers in our office. But with the flash drive, you could probably access the accounts on any computer with internet access. Since the accounts were anonymous, none of it could be traced back to us. There was also a failsafe button connected to all of the computers that in an emergency would destroy all of the hard drives of every computer in the building that had any shred of information concerning our off-the-books business. Once that button was pushed, anyone investigating us would have no way of tracing anything. I came into and out of the office several times a day, and even more now that Steiner was beginning to take on investments from clients all over the region. During the day, for ease of access, I kept the flash drive on a slim gold chain worm around my neck like a necklace. The chain was worth a couple of $100. Steiner had given it to me. The flash drive was worth, well, it accessed close to $500 million. I often joked to Jason that it was the most expensive necklace on earth. As I booted up the computers so we'd be able to instantly give Steiner any information he'd need. If he did show up, I noticed Adriana going from person to person in the office. Adriana went out every morning and brought back coffee for the people who worked in the office. They all loved her for it. Most of our staff couldn't just get up and leave when they wanted to. Secretaries had to type and file. Salespeople had to man the phones, so they couldn't leave. Adriana, on the other hand, just seemed to do whatever the hell she wanted. And in only a couple of weeks, she was better regarded than I was, and I'd been there for years. She usually brought coffee for her father too, but she had never asked or remembered me. After speaking to everyone, except for Steiner's men, she sat down at a desk and made a phone call or two. I knew that she was calling in the coffee order, but even then she'd be gone for at least 40 minutes to an hour. Outside, I heard a large truck revving its motor. I also heard a slam and realized that it was the garbage truck emptying the huge dumpster in the back. As soon as Adriana left the office, I headed back to Jason's office. I closed the door behind me, and he looked up. It was as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders, and it was crushing him. My heart went out to him. We were both over our heads in this situation. Jason had only sought to save his company and the livelihood of his employees. Jason, Adriana is out getting coffee. I smiled. I thought you didn't want to, he whined. It suddenly dawned on me that he was moping like a child at the thought that he was losing me. Do you want to sulk, or do you want a BJ? I asked. He quickly jumped up and sat on his desk facing the door. He dropped his pants around his ankles and leaned back to enjoy it. I dropped to my knees between his legs and got to work. I enjoyed the fact that I could so easily reduce him to a gibbering idiot, but I didn't have long to enjoy the thought. Kathy, what are you? I knew the voice almost as well as I knew my own. I turned in horror to face the eyes of the man who meant more to me than anyone else on the planet. For a second, those eyes bore straight into mine. All of the pain he felt was transferred to me. I read it all in those eyes. I saw his disbelief. I saw his pain. And I saw it turn to anger. But before Bernard could move, someone else sprang into action. Bernard would never have hit me. But Adriana had no such limits. She crossed the floor like lightning and punched me in the face. This time it wasn't a slap, it was a full-on punch that rocked my head back. She grabbed me around my neck and slammed me to the floor. Bernard just glared at Jason. He seemed to be too overcome by shock to move. Adriana punched me again, and I realized as she punched me that the door was open and everyone in the office had seen me giving Jason a BJ. The commotion brought a couple of Steiner's gorillas into the office. They saw Adriana attacking me and tried to intervene. Throughout the incident, except for being pummeled by Adriana, I hadn't moved. I hadn't tried to defend myself at all. I just let myself be hit. My eyes had remained riveted on my husband. Neither he nor Jason had moved either. Bernard's look of shock gradually morphed into a look of anger and disgust. I guess seeing your wife on her knees with another man's meat will do that to you. Bernard had no idea that I'd done it out of pure pity. I really believed that he thought that I enjoyed it. I had to set him straight. But before I could move, one of the gorillas had grabbed Adriana, and the second one was heading her way. I knew that Bernard was in good physical shape. All of that running and working out had to do something for him. But I never expected his rage-fueled actions to be what they were. I was kind of hurt by it. Bernard hadn't even moved when Adriana had attacked me. But as soon as the gorilla grabbed Adriana's arm, Bernard had reacted. He had leaped onto Jason's desk and grabbed the lamp. The lamp had a heavy fake marble base, but Bernard had snatched the lamp with one hand and swung it like a club. The lamp came down like an axe and the gorilla went down. Bernard jumped down off of the desk and landed in front of the second gorilla that was clawing at his jacket. I had never seen it, but I knew he was reaching for a gun. No! I screamed. Bernard's foot struck the gorilla in the nuts so hard that the man was almost lifted off of his feet. Bernard's leg recoiled, and then he brought it up again. His knee caught the man in the stomach. The gorilla started to retch, and his head came forward. Bernard then brought his knee up again, catching the man under his chin. There was a sickening crunch. Bernard's moves seemed really familiar to me, but their effect was totally new. I had never heard the sound of bones breaking before, but I'll remember it forever. It was indelibly etched in my memory, the same way that Adriana's words were. "Come on, baby. We have to go," she said. Bernard turned to look at me one last time. As our eyes met, a shock went through me. It was like looking into the eyes of a stranger. The man I loved suddenly hated me. I had to explain this all to him. Adriana looked at Jason and smiled. "If I were you, Dad, I'd spend the last few hours of my life trying to figure out how to explain this shit to Mom when you see her." She grabbed Bernard's arm, and they left together. Jason and I were paralyzed. Neither of us moved. As Adriana and my husband ran out the door to the stairway, Jason and I just looked at each other. At the same time, the elevator door opened and a bunch of Steiner's men came out. They looked at the chaos in the office and in Jason's office. Jason was standing there with his pants still around his ankles. I was standing there crying. One of the gorillas looked at us and shook his head. "Where?" he asked. Jason foolishly pointed towards the door to the stairwell. He was horrified as the gorillas all pulled out guns. "No, it's my daughter," he whined. "Then she'd better come quietly," said the man emotionlessly. "Mr. Steiner don't like disturbances. Remember what happened with your wife." Jason and I sprang into action. We ran down the back stairs following the gorillas. I had no idea what we'd have done. They didn't work for us or listen to us. I saw Adriana and Bernard running towards their cars. I saw the gorillas that were too far behind them to catch them and felt glad. As long as Bernard was alive, there was a chance for us. "No!" yelled Jason as the gorillas all raised guns to fire at Adriana and Bernard. The gorillas were going to fire through the glass windows and doors. I guess they didn't care about damage to the building. Adriana's car was a convertible. She leaped over the door and dropped into her seat. I heard the sound of her motor start almost instantly. Bernard had to be even faster, because he had to open the door of his car and get inside. Yet his motor started only a fraction of a second after Adriana's. But as fast as they were, it wasn't going to be fast enough. I heard the sound of the first shot, and then I heard the loudest metallic clang ever. The garbage truck that I'd forgotten about had dropped a huge dumpster right in front of the door. The gorillas still shot and bullets bounced off of the heavy dumpster. Some of them ricocheted back inside of the building. Realizing the danger, they stopped shooting and tried to get out of the door. The door opened outwards, and the dumpster had the door pinned shut. They all ran towards the front door, but it was too late. Two rapidly accelerating muscle cars were fading into the distance. Both Jason and I breathed a sigh of relief as we got to the front of the building and saw the cars disappearing in the distance. But the relief was short-lived as silver-gray Lincoln pulled up in the parking lot. Fresh from a meeting with the mayor, Steiner got out of it. "Why is everyone out here?" he asked. His eyes turned feral before anyone could answer him. "Is the money safe?" "Of course, boss," said one of the gorillas. "Remember, we did that thing the other day." Steiner nodded his head and breathed a sigh of relief. "So what happened?" he asked as we walked into the building. Now back to Bernard's side of the story. Once we'd hit the freeway, we wove quickly through traffic. We were doing over 100 miles an hour in the light traffic window between the morning rush hour and the heavy lunch crowd. The ringing of the phone through my car's speakers took my attention from the road. Without taking my hands off of the wheel, I accepted the call. "Where are we going?" she asked. "I'm going home," I said. I could almost feel the sound of her sigh. "That's not a good idea," she said. "Follow me for a while. I'll find a place where we can talk." I slowed down while she drove by me and got in front. I followed her until we pulled into a large park. We parked in front of a field where a group of kids were playing soccer. I got out of my car and sat on the hood. She sat down next to me. Unlike when we watched the kids playing baseball in the other park the day before, I neither understood or care about the kids kicking the ball back and forth. I thought it was stupid. Why didn't they just play hockey? "I guess you're in some kind of shock," she said. Even as she spoke, her eyes got to me, and I had to look away. "Look at me, Bernard," she said. "I have a lot to tell you, and I need you to be able to trust me." I looked at her, and she looked into my eyes as well. She seemed not to realize how beautiful she was. She told me everything. For some reason, she started far beyond where she needed to. She told me almost her whole life story and beyond. She even told me how her parents got together. I was sure there was a reason for that, but I couldn't see it. She told me about her life and her career. She told me about her family's business and how it had been begun by her great-grandfather. She had always expected to someday run it, but it was clear that would never happen now. Times had changed and the business was no longer viable. Her father probably should have either moved it in a different direction or let it die. Instead, he'd taken money from criminals. As much as Adriana could tell, the business had become some kind of front. Her father, to the best of her knowledge, had never expected it to become what it had. But he'd been struck by a smooth criminal. Steiner associated with all of the right people and gave a lot of money to charities. On the surface, he was a legitimate businessman, but that was only the surface. In reality, he was as bad as the other criminals and probably twice as ruthless. Her family business was now a clearinghouse for money from Steiner's various criminal enterprises. Her father had never had any idea what he was getting himself into. She believed that her father had seen the arrangement as simply a quick infusion of cash to give him some breathing room. But it became obvious that it would have to become an ongoing process. His business had gotten to the point where it wouldn't survive without Steiner. Originally, it had been a very simple arrangement. It was almost as if he had just rented Steiner a room to store his cash in. But as time went on, each came to need more from the other until the two businesses relied so heavily upon each other that it became difficult to separate them. Of course, none of that mattered to me. What did matter to me had nothing to do with her father's business. Adriana and her mother had always been very close. It had been her mother who'd urged Adriana to use her education and see some of the world before she settled down and made any type of decision in regards to helping out or taking over the family business. Over the past few years, Adriana had watched from afar as her mother's health had suffered. Her mother had urged her to continue in her career, but her health had never improved. Her various illnesses and injuries, both mental and physical, had progressed over the years. Adriana had never realized how bad they'd become. It was a very cryptic email from her mother that had brought her home, but she'd arrived too late to save her mother. In Adriana's mind, two people were responsible for her mother's death. Those two people were her father and my wife, Kathy. Adriana believed that, being a practical woman, her mother would have eventually gotten past the criminal situation. With her accounting wizardry, she might have been able to come up with a practical exit strategy for her father. But Adriana knew that where her father was concerned, her mother could never have been practical. Her father's betrayal and the broken heart it spawned had been the real instigation for her mother's death. Even at work and around the office, Kathy was always around her father. From the very instant that Adriana had stepped into the job, she'd known that Kathy was the woman her mother had written about in her notes. But Adriana had also realized that her mother had sometimes been given to flights of fantasy, so she waited until she saw it with her own eyes. The rumors around the office were that it had been going on for some time and was fairly blatant. In this case, the rumors were true, and after confronting her father on it, he seemed to believe that Kathy would eventually leave me for her father. I was almost in tears after hearing all of Adriana's story. I felt like the world's biggest fool. I couldn't believe that my wife had managed to pull the wool over my eyes for all of that time. I got my car keys out of my pocket. At that moment, I just wanted to drive. I just wanted to hit the road and drive forever, or at least until the pain went away. It's hard to accept the fact that the person you love more than anyone else in the world not only doesn't love you, but has been screwing another guy behind your back for a long time. You just feel stupid and empty. I couldn't hold my head up. I felt warm and yet cold inside. More than anything else, I needed to get away. It was as if the road was calling to me. At that moment, nothing else mattered. I closed my eyes to prevent the tears from spilling over. I hurt more than I ever had at any previous time in my life. And then I felt it. It was like being wrapped in a warm cocoon. I opened my eyes and found Adriana hugging me. She wiped away the single tear that had actually escaped my closely shut eyelids. "Bernard, you're not alone," she told me. "They hurt me too, and they may as well have killed my mother. Their affair led her to do it. My father was the only man she ever loved. The thought of losing him to another woman drove her over the edge." I nodded as if I understood, but in reality, I was thinking about the thousands of times that Kathy had sworn she loved me. I was thinking of the thousands of times that, "Bernard, honey, we have a lot to do in a very short time," she said, pulling me out of my thoughts. "Steiner's people are going to be after us in a bit. We have, eh?" "But why?" I asked. "Your father can have Kathy. Screw her. Screw him both. I'm better off alone. They have no reason to come after us. I'll just call her and wish them good luck." "Oh, honey, I wish that was all there was to this," she said. "But I'm afraid I've gotten you into a hell of a lot of trouble. What we have to do is—" "What we?" I hissed. "How the hell is there a we?" She let go of me then and stepped back from me. "Lady, I first laid eyes on you 24 hours ago. I don't know you, and you don't know me. There is no we. There's only me. I'm alone now. I wish I'd never laid eyes on you. God damn it." She stood there looking at me, and damn it if she didn't have the hint of a smile on her face. "So why can't I go home?" I asked. "It's my fault," she smiled. This really has nothing to do with my father rutting with your wife. I can't do anything to my father. As angry as I am at him, I still see him as that man who pushed me on the swings and taught me how to ride a bike. So cut to the chase, I said. You really get fiery when you're angry, don't you? She asked. I just glared at her. Anyway, since I can't hurt my father, I decided to let the criminals do it for me. So I took something that they will want back pretty badly. It will probably take them a couple of hours to discover that it's missing, but once they do, you and I will be in a heap of trouble. As angry as I was, I still couldn't bring myself to get upset with her. You're going to have to explain this whole thing to me, I said. Talk slowly, like I was a moron, and don't leave anything out this time. It turned out that she planned most of what had happened, but her plan had gone wrong, so she'd improvised. The result was much more dangerous than she had ever suspected. She'd expected for us to catch her father and Kathy in the act. That much had happened. She'd then expected for me to beat the shit out of her father, but I just stood there frozen in place. I was so hurt that I could barely think, let alone move. So she'd changed the plan. If I wouldn't beat her father, she'd let the gangsters do it. So she pretended to attack Kathy. And she really had hit Kathy again, but it was only to get to what she really wanted. During their tussle, she'd stolen the flash drive that Kathy wore around her neck. And now, at any moment the gangsters were going to discover that the flash drive that allowed them to access their accounts was gone. And once they did, our lives wouldn't be worth shit. Our only hope was the road. The funniest thing about it was that she seemed to relish the thought of it. It was almost like this was a big adventure to her. Adriana, I don't understand any of this, I said. I mean, even from the beginning, none of this makes sense. So your dad was screwing my wife. Why not just tell me about it and let me divorce her and sue your dad? That's the way a normal person would have handled it. Or why not just confront the two of them and leave me out of it? She frowned then and drew that pretty mouth into a tight line. Goddamn, I'm glad I'm an old man, I said under my breath. I'm 27. You're only 42, she said. You're not that old. And what does you being older have to do with anything? Let's concentrate on the problems at hand, I said. So you got us into this shit. Do you have a plan to get us out of it? Well, first I need to make contact with my uncle and his friends, she said. Maybe we should go there first. Who's your uncle, and what does he have to do with all of this? I asked. As we spoke, she was slowly moving closer to me. It reminded me of a jungle animal creeping up on its prey in the tall grass. My uncle is my mom's brother, she said. He's really pissed at my dad too. He's the guy who drove the garbage truck that prevented them from catching us. He was our escape contingency. So you planned ahead enough to have an escape sequence, but didn't foresee that criminals might want to kill us because you stole their information? I asked. That part of it was me improvising, she smiled. So you just improvised us into having to run for our lives? I asked. Didn't you consider us losing everything? We're probably going to lose everything that's important to us. A tear rolled down that perfect cheek, and I immediately softened my tone. Adriana, surely there are people and things that matter to you. A woman as beautiful as you are has to have a husband or a boyfriend or two that she's really going to miss, and I began. Bernard, my mom was my best friend, she hissed. My mom was always the person I was closest to. I mean, my dad was important too, but growing up we didn't spend much time together because he was always working. As several heads in the stands turned to hear what she was screaming about, she moved even closer to me and spoke more quietly. To anyone watching, it probably looked as if we were a couple having an argument. Maybe my dad and I weren't as close as I was with my mom, she continued, but I had a lot of respect for him until I discovered that he was screwing your wife. Then I lost even any respect for him. And yeah, Bernard, there are a couple of guys I'm seeing, but to tell you the truth, I've never really been serious about a guy. I mean, I'm a grown woman. I have my needs too, but there's no one I'm sad about leaving behind. So I'm really sorry for including you in this, but I'm not upset about us going on the open road. I know you're losing a lot, but I promise I'll make it all up to you. I swear you'll gain more than you're losing. Let's check the story from Kathy's side. My head felt like it was full of cotton. I couldn't think. I couldn't function. I'm not even sure how I managed to continue breathing. My job, my work, all of this bullshit with Jason and Steiner had always seemed like a game. It was like a funny little dream world inside of my true reality with my husband. If any of it got too serious, I'd always told myself that I could just quit the job and walk away from it. It was kind of like a song I'd heard on the radio. Back to life. Back to reality. I have no idea who sang the song or what it meant, but it fit. The stupid thing is that I could have done just that. When I started having sex with Jason, I should have quit and gone back to life. But I thought I was in control. I told myself that Bernard wasn't hurt by it. I told myself that Bernard was actually better off. Since I'd started with Jason, I'd begun to appreciate what Bernard and I did even more. As a result, Bernard was getting much more sex than he'd ever gotten before. I told myself that if he'd had the choice, he'd have been okay with it. But I was only lying to myself. When Steiner and his expensive suit wearing gorillas came in, I should have quit then. When I found out what we were really doing, I should have quit then. But now I really have to quit. The problem is that quitting might not be as easy now. It's not even a point of disappointing Jason. It's a point of whether or not Steiner will even let me quit. As we walked towards his, I guess technically it was still Jason's office, but it didn't seem like it when Steiner was there. Anyway, as we walked towards the office, Steiner seemed to be both happy and amused. He was actually smiling. But as we entered the office, and he saw two of his gorillas still suffering from my husband's attack, his face changed. One of the giant men was holding his nuts and bleeding heavily from his mouth. The other was still unconscious. "What happened to them?" asked Steiner suddenly. The difference in his demeanor had been as sudden as if someone had just flipped a switch. The goons following us had come in on the tail end of things, so they really had no idea. They just heard the noise and ran into the room. Steiner turned to us, and both Jason and I knew that lying could be fatal. Jason explained the entire situation to him. He started by telling him how Adriana had come in and caught Jason and I in the act. He also told him how, unfortunately, my husband had been with her. He explained how my husband hadn't actually done anything at first, but Adriana had attacked me, and since the goons had been told to protect Jason and me, one of them had tried to grab Adriana. That had been a mistake, because it had spurred my husband to protect her. The conscious goon had nodded his head, verifying that Jason was telling the truth. Steiner seemed to calm down then. "So this was all about you two playing hide the salami in the office?" he asked. We nodded. "That was not only unprofessional, it was stupid," he said. "You two should have stuck to that motel you used during your lunch hours. You know, the one over on Cherry Hill Road?" Jason sucked in a breath. Neither of us realized that we'd been watched. "Let's get down to business," said Steiner. "We have." He stopped in mid-sentence and looked at Jason and me. "What the hell is wrong with the two of you?" "I need to call my husband and try to explain," I whined. "I'll probably have to quit. I'm sure he won't let me work here anymore. And I need to talk to Adriana," said Jason. "She's my only remaining relative. She's probably going to leave town and go back to South America or wherever she was working. I mean, if she wants to go back to her life, that's okay. But I don't want her leaving just because she's pissed at me." "All right. You have 20 minutes, grumbled Steiner. "I want to call the guys in the new building to let them know we have a pallet of money coming in." I quickly left the office and called Bernard's cell phone. He didn't answer. I borrowed a phone from one of my coworkers and called him again. He picked it up. "Hello," he said, sounding more tired than I'd ever heard him. "Bernard, honey, it's not what you think." "I love why," I began. He hung up before I got a chance to finish. Tears ran down my cheeks and I knew that I was in trouble. I had to get out of there. I had to find my husband and save my marriage. The most awful feeling settled over me. I felt as if I had lost everything. I walked back into the office, determined to handle whatever Steiner wanted to tell us and then leave as soon as he was gone. Steiner was rarely with us for more than an hour or so. He talked about a colleague of his who needed our services. We would be receiving a small pallet of cash. There was about $10 million worth of small denomination bills. Steiner claimed it came from street sources, which we now knew meant it came from sales of drugs, prostitution, or the sale of items taken in various robberies and burglaries. After receiving the cash, we would count it, store it, and slowly funnel it into legitimate and offshore bank accounts. In exchange for our services, we would receive 20% if what we took in. In order to keep Steiner insulated and also to keep the Darrow Company away from any direct criminal ties, we'd be paying Steiner's colleague back with money from one of our offshore accounts. The plan was to just juggle the amounts of money around in one of our accounts and give Steiner's colleague the account number and password. He could then withdraw from the account any and all of the money and or transfer it into other bank accounts. Was it really so simple for Steiner to make $2 million just for moving money around that someone else had stolen? I was amazed. Everything seemed so normal on the outside, but inside I was dying. It had only been an hour or so, but it seemed like every minute that I was there was another minute for more of my life to dribble away. I imagined Bernard going back to our house and taking all of his things and driving away. I imagined that I slowly went crazy until one day a package arrived with his name, but no return address. I quickly opened the package and found divorce papers. "Kathy, let's look through the accounts and figure out how to do this," Steiner said. I shook the cobwebs from my consciousness and sat down at the computer to access the accounts. After I brought up the program that allowed me to access the accounts, I reached for the necklace with the flash drive. I pulled the neck of my blouse farther open and tried to find the flash drive, but it was gone. "Can we do this today, Kathy?" said Steiner. "The flash drive is gone," I said. "Are you sure you put it on?" he asked calmly. "Yes, sir," I said. "I always put it around my neck first thing in the morning in case you show up and want to access the accounts. I remember doing it this morning." "And you never left the premises?" he asked. Before I answered, he looked at one of his gorillas. The man sat down at one of the computers and brought up a program I had never seen. He tapped a sequence of keys, and the screen split into 8 squares. "Start with 6 a.m. this morning," said Steiner. "What am I looking for?" asked the man. "I'll know it when I see it," said Steiner. The squares on the screen were all video feeds from cameras that neither Jason nor I knew existed. It quickly became obvious that Steiner had recorded not only the vault as I thought, but every inch of the building. We watched at 10 times the speed of real life. We were just watching for movement at first, but as employees began to arrive and begin their tasks, we concentrated. We saw people at their desks. We saw people going to the bathroom. We saw people talking. And then I arrived. Steiner nodded his head and saw me put the drive around my neck. Cameras followed my every move and Jason's as well. The cameras showed my argument with Adriana and Jason's argument with her as well. The cameras showed Jason and me talking while other cameras showed Adriana walking around the office talking coffee orders and then talking on the phone. Adriana left the room. Jason and I had assumed that she left the building the way she always did. The cameras showed me going into Jason's office and a camera there showed me on my knees. "Freeze that one," said Steiner. And there I was kneeling in front of Jason, giving him a BJ. I was embarrassed. I also saw what Bernard must have seen. I no longer wondered why my husband didn't want to speak to me. Another camera showed Adriana getting off of the elevator on the first floor. As she got off, Bernard was getting on. They spoke and she got back on the elevator. "Unfreeze that one," said Steiner. As the footage rolled, the door opened and they were there all over again. It was strange watching me get beat up from a vantage point other than my own. "Stop. Run that again," said Steiner. "Run it very slowly." The first time I'd seen it, I'd been sure that Adriana had been enraged and just swinging at me blindly. She'd hit me with a hard shot to the jaw and I'd managed to somehow duck or avoid a couple of her punches. I hadn't tried to defend myself or fight back because I was hoping that Bernard would feel some sort of sympathy for me or try to help me. He didn't. Seeing the fight had only showed me that Bernard had been stunned. He'd had no idea what was going on. But Adriana had planned it. At normal speed, it looked like a brawl between me and an angry bitch. But in slow motion, it became obvious. The first punch had been right on target, but she hadn't been trying to hurt me. Her intention had been to turn my head away from her. The next couple of punches, the ones I thought I'd avoided, had also been exactly as she intended. As her second punch had landed in the junction between my neck and shoulder, I hadn't actually avoided it. She'd planned it. Much in the way a pickpocket bumps you with one part of their body to distract you while their other hand snatches your wallet. Adriana got me. It was beautiful. The first punch had knocked my head away from her. The follow-through had landed her hand in my shoulder. As I staggered backwards, she'd moved with me, almost as if we were locked together in a dance. The hand on my shoulder grabbed the thin gold necklace that held the flash drive. She punched me on the opposite side. The blow that I'd thought missed had actually been right on target. I hadn't even felt the thin gold chain snap because of the blow. Her third punch had been more of a push to move me away from her, and even as I fell, she pocketed the flash drive. The gorillas entering the room only saw me in trouble. What was even more amazing was seeing the look of fear on Adriana's face as they headed for her. She obviously hadn't planned on them, but suddenly Bernard moved. My husband, who hadn't lifted a finger to help me, moved faster than anyone expected. He also moved in a way that no one expected. Instead of directly attacking the huge goon confronting Adriana, he jumped up onto the desk. While still in motion, he used his momentum to help him snatch the huge lamp from the desk. The incredible thing was that I don't think Bernard was strong enough to lift the lamp on his own. But with rage fueling him and his speed and momentum adding velocity, he swung the heavy lamp upwards. He didn't so much swing the lamp at the gorilla as he did simply redirect its arc, with devastating consequences. The last sequence was funny. Well, it was funny to me. My husband is not a fighter. To the men watching, it looked like Bernard was some sort of martial artist. A little guy taking down a huge gorilla always makes people think that. But Bernard has never been in a fight in his life. What they saw was Taibo. Bernard was always trying to get me to work out. One of the things he got me to try was those Taibo aerobics videos with Billy Blanks. Thousands of suburban housewives kicked their way skinny by doing those martial arts-inspired aerobics videos with Billy Blanks. I hated it. I couldn't do any of the moves even slowly, let alone at the speed they did in the video. The worst thing was that they did that to music, and I have no rhythm. Bernard, of course, being a runner, was very coordinated and did all of those moves effortlessly. So when that muscle-bound animal in a suit had stood in front of Bernard, my husband had kicked him square in the nuts and then followed up with a high knee to the gut and another knee to the bent-over man's jaw. I think Bernard was more surprised than anyone when the gorilla went down, spraying blood and teeth all over the room. "Your daughter stole the drive," Steiner said to Jason. "I don't think she knows what it is," said Jason quickly. "I think she does," said Steiner. "I think she purposefully took it to steal $387 million from me because she's pissed off at you." Jason had nothing to say to that. "I think I'm gonna have to hunt her down and get my money back, Jason," said Steiner. He looked at me. "Kathy, how well does your hubby know Jason's daughter?" he asked. "He doesn't," I said. "I think he just came here to surprise me and ran into." "That's one way of looking at it," he said. "May I show you too? Make it 3 pieces of evidence to the contrary?" "Back the tape up," he said. "Stop there." On the screen was Adriana talking to someone on the phone. "I think your daughter has been watching you 2 idiots for a while," said Steiner. "I think that as soon as she got done arguing with her father, she set you up by pretending to go out for coffee. I think she called your husband and brought him down here to catch the 2 of you at it." "Cut to the part of her getting off of the elevator," he said. The screen switched to another camera that showed Adriana get off of the elevator. "If she didn't know him, why does she walk right up to him and start talking to him?" asked Steiner. "She was going for coffee and just happened to run into him," said Jason. "Bullshit," said Steiner. "She's going out for coffee, right?" "Yes," said Jason. "We saw her go all over the office taking orders." "We did," said Steiner. "We also saw her write all of the orders down on a big notepad. Who could remember all of that shit, right?" "Okay," said Jason. "What's the point? If she's going for coffee, where's the notepad?" asked Steiner. "I think she wanted you 2 to think she was going for coffee, but she went to meet her boyfriend. We watched Adriana get off of the elevator again, and she didn't have the notebook." "Let's move on to the, fights," said Steiner. "Jason's daughter is slapping you around like a red-headed stepchild, Kathy. Yet your husband just stands there." As soon as poor Brian looks at Jason's daughter sideways, your husband went into survival mode to protect her. And after the fight was done, what did she say? The guy rolled back the video and brought up the volume, reminding me of something that had seemed funny to me at the time, but had slipped my mind. I almost threw up as I heard it again. "Come on, baby, we have to go," said Adriana. "Why the hell is she calling a complete stranger baby?" asked Steiner. And the phrase, "we have to go," implies that the 2 of them are in it together. And Jason, that last bit about you figuring out what you're going to say to your wife is kind of obvious. "What do you think is going to happen to you 2 if I don't get my money back?" Steiner turned to one of his guys. "Find him," he said. "You can't kill my daughter," yelled Jason. "If I get my money back, nobody gets hurt," said Steiner. "But you're going to have to put your daughter someplace safe like you did your wife." "But that place drove her crazy," said Jason. "Well, we'll put Kathy's husband with her so they can keep each other company," said Steiner. "That ought to make things easier for the 2 of you too," he laughed. The last thing I wanted was Bernard holed up somewhere with Adriana. I'd never get him back. He was already angry at me, and this was all my fault. I never should have allowed myself to become entangled in this situation. I should have walked away a long time ago. There was no future for me here. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life, or any part of it, with Jason. My sympathy didn't extend that far. "Talk to your people," said Steiner. "Find them and get my money back before my people do. And you, Kathy, is there any other way to access the accounts? What if you'd lost the flash drive? Or if it was damaged?" "I have a list of all of the account numbers," I shrieked. "I just don't have the passwords. They're all 32-character alphanumeric codes. I'll try to come up with something." He looked at me and nodded. "You do that," he said. "Work fast. Your marriage may depend on it." Now let's check the story from Adriana's side. He is so dumb. I gave the man every reason I can think of for why we shouldn't go to his house. Okay, truthfully, I left one out. I didn't really like the idea of him going back into that house with all of the photos and memories of her. Yep, I'll admit it, I'm jealous of that old hooker. And it's not her huge jugs. He loves her. That's hard to get over. But he insisted on grabbing a few things that we couldn't hit the road without. He needed his passport, in case we left the country. And he wanted his iPad. Honestly, his iPhone was the exact same thing, only smaller. and he could download all of his music, photos, and documents from the cloud. But he wouldn't take a no for an answer, and I like making him happy. So here I am sitting on the hood of my Camaro playing lookout while waiting for him. Our cars are parked facing each other. It's almost like they're kissing. I wondered what it would be like to kiss him. The weird thing is that he hasn't even touched me yet. Every time I even hint about us getting together, he laughs. I know what I look like and how guys react to me, but someone has obviously failed to explain things to Bernard. But then I didn't expect it to be easy. I still remember how hard my mom told me she had to work to get my dad. But she had to go through a lot of women his age starting when she was only a teenager. My task will be a lot easier. All I have to do is go through one silly old woman who's already cheated on him. And I'm already old enough and willing to do anything his little heart desires. I was so busy imagining my future with Bernard that I never heard the guy sneaking up behind me. By the time I turned around and stared down the barrel of his pistol, it was too late to do anything. "Where's the money?" he asked in a very cultured voice for a thug. "Smell my finger," I smiled. "That's a really old joke," he said. "It's not a joke," I said. "If you smell my fingers, you'll believe me when I tell you where the money is." "Why?" he asked. "Because my fingers smell like crap," I smiled. "Literally. Does this have something to do with sex?" he asked. "Nope, not at all," I smiled. "Then why would your fingers smell like crap?" he asked. "And where's the money?" "I shoved it up your mom," I said. "That's a lot of money and my mom has a really small frame," he said without a flicker of anger. "I didn't say it was easy," I said. "I had to push really hard to get it passed." I could tell he wasn't amused. "It's only a flash drive," I said. "It's a lot smaller than a toy." She really didn't mind. "She probably didn't feel it at all since she's been dead for 6 years, he said, pointing his gun straight between my eyes. "You seem to be a really nice man," I said. "I'm sorry if I offended you." "I really am." "So where's the drive?" he asked. "Good night," I said. For a second, he looked at me strangely. Then the light in his eyes went out as Bernard clubbed him over the head with what looked like a large wrench. "Told you this was dumb," I snapped at him. "Only because someone insisted on parking our 2 extremely noticeable cars right out front," he said, and then proceeded to sit an extremely noticeable woman right on top of them. "You always say the nicest things," I said. "So you think I'm noticeable?" "Oh wait, you said extremely noticeable, didn't you?" "Get your extremely noticeable but in your car," he grumbled. I reached into my car and pulled out a bag. "Put your phone in this," I told him. "What is it?" he asked, looking at the small bag. "Damn, it's heavy." "It should be," I said. "It's lined with lead strips. Maybe now you won't have to keep knocking guys out over me. And you're following me this time." I got into my Camaro and started it up. I love the sound of my engine. I revved up my motor a couple of times and then heard the sound of that stupid motor from Bernard's Pontiac Firebird AM. I had to admit it, but there was no way I could ever tell him. That motor sounded really good. He pulled in behind me, and we were off. We hit the freeway and kept the speed down to just barely over the speed limit. We drove for about an hour and then left the freeway. I know that we had a bunch of criminals chasing us, but I was giddy. I'm not the kind of girl who needs a white picket fence around a crappy little house in the suburbs. I don't want any whiny kids, and I'm way more comfortable in a pair of jeans than in a dress or a skirt. I loved my mom more than anyone else alive. I believed in her dream about our family. But now that she's gone, I have a new dream. I have my car and my own man to love. He's a little bit misguided about cars, and he has no idea how much he loves me yet. It's a challenge, and I love challenges. I can hardly wait for that moment when I look in his eyes and he realizes how he feels about me. My heart is gonna explode. Oh hell. He stopped. I pulled over and backed up to where he was standing. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, noticing that he barely reacted to me calling him honey. He was looking at the ground. "Where are we going?" he asked angrily. "We're going to my uncle's place," I told him. "I need to do some stuff there before we leave." "Where the hell does your uncle live?" he asked. I got the idea that he was afraid to go to my uncle's house. He still didn't fully trust me. Maybe he thought I wanted to get him out in the boonies and kill him. "Bernard, look into my eyes," I told him. "You don't understand this yet. For an engineer, you're a little slow on the uptake, but I would never let anyone hurt you. You'll be perfectly safe there. I swear it." "Adriana, I already kind of trust you," he said, "but this isn't helping. I'll wait for you here." "So you don't want to go to my uncle's farm?" I asked. "A farm," he said. I swear his voice went almost an octave higher. "You mean a farm? With like animals and crap? Are you afraid of animals, Bernard?" I asked. "Of course not," he spat. I love horses. Then what's the problem? I asked. And then I noticed it. Bernard was standing on the blacktop surface of the road at the turnoff we'd just gone down. I was standing on a dirt road. Bernard, please don't tell me that your car doesn't work on dirt roads, I said. Never tried it, he spat. And I'm not about to start now. Do you know what dirt does to your undercarriage? Don't have to worry about it, I smirked. My baby is undercoat. So is mine, he spat. It's undercoat twice, and my entire frame and subframe connectors are powder-coated. So what are you worried about? I asked. Are you worried about moisture and dirt rusting your exhaust system? Nah, my exhaust system is chrome, he spat. Big deal. My exhaust tips are chrome too, I smiled. No, Adri, he said. I have chrome headers, a chrome off-road X-pipe, and all of the pipes from the engine to the tips are chrome. You're full of crap, I said. Take a look, he said. And I did. And he was telling the truth. I hate to admit it, but I was jealous. As soon as we get out of this, I'm doing that too, I hissed. And then it hit me. I dropped down onto my back again and looked under his car. Bernard, where are your catalytic converters? I asked. They're small, he smirked. You probably missed them. You liar, I laughed. You don't have any. That's illegal. Only if you get caught, he said. I'll pay the fine. Don't you care about the environment? I asked. Not one goddamned bit, he mumbled. Do you know what a catalytic converter does? It's like trying to run a marathon while wearing a plugged-up gas mask. My engine needs to breathe. All right, how about if we drive into town on the paved road and call my uncle to come and get us? I asked. A half hour later, we were sitting in a small diner when I saw my uncle's huge Dodge Ram truck park in front. My uncle Rick came into the diner with his best friend Ray. I told my uncle about why he had to come and get us. So he had clearly dressed for the occasion. My uncle was, instead of his usual uniform of a Go Army t-shirt and jeans, sporting a Mopar t-shirt. He smiled as soon as he saw me. He held out his hand to Bernard and they shook hands. Thanks for watching over my crazy niece, he growled. Bernard just nodded. And then the fun began. Pretty smart of you knowing your little car can't make it over dirt roads, smirked my uncle. They made some more jokes and they were all laughing hysterically. I actually saw tears rolling down my uncle's cheeks. He turned to me and whispered, I like this guy. You were right. He's a good one. We got into my uncle's car and drove out to the farm. Bernard ignored my uncle's Hellcat as if it didn't exist. I got the laptop I'd bought a few days before, but had a sudden change of heart. I grabbed a few things that I thought I'd need and went out to look for Bernard. He was out with my uncle looking at horses. I thought you were gonna do your computer thing, said my uncle. Unc, I had a sudden thought, I said. I have our cell phones in shielded lead bags. Bernard and I are gonna use the cheap burner phones I bought. They're decent phones, so you'll be able to contact us. But I think that if I did anything on the computer here, Steiner's people might be able to track us here. I don't want to put you in any kind of danger. He nodded. He drove us back to the diner and watched as we got into our cars. I could tell that he too was impressed by Bernard's engine and exhaust note. As I watched, he leaned his head in and said something to Bernard. Even as we drove off, I wondered what they talked about. We drove out of Michigan and into Ohio. We jumped back across the border into Michigan and stopped in a small town called Temperance. We split up there. This for some reason really bothered me. I'd expected Bernard and me to stay together. Using the flash drive on my laptop, I logged into the banking app. I had practiced doing it with a friend of mine who was into finances and banking. I wished then that I had her there, but I couldn't trust anyone with what we were doing. Actually, there were two people I trusted. I trusted my Uncle Rick and I trusted Bernard. Bernard had saved me twice already, and I hadn't made a big thing of it, but I was really grateful. I transferred almost all of the money out of the accounts and into two new accounts in the same banking system. I had to pay very hefty fees for the transactions, but since I was playing with house money, I really didn't mind. This time, though, I didn't use the bank's account numbering system. I didn't need something so complicated that I needed a flash drive to store it. I used Bernard's VIN number for one account and mine for the other. I used a very specific phrase with 32 characters for the password to both accounts. I did leave small amounts of cash in the accounts on the flash drive. I left $28 in one account since my parents had been married for 28 years, which was about a year longer than I'd been alive. I left $93 in another account because that was how long my father's company had been in business before he sold it out to criminals. All in all, I left roughly $385 in the accounts to represent the fact that I had stolen $385 million. I was sure that Steiner would go apeshit when he found out. I closed the laptop and smiled. I felt a warmth behind me. I turned to find Bernard sitting at the table right behind mine. I reached out both of my arms and hugged him to me. He squirmed at first and finally gave in and let me hug him. I wrote down the website of the one offshore bank we were now using on a tiny piece of paper. "What's this?" he asked. "Your new bank," I smirked. "Yours is in Switzerland. Mine is in Germany." "Why do we need new banks?" he asked. "We have to have some place to put the money," I said. "We'll slowly filter it into U.S. banks, a few hundred or a few thousand at a time." "But we're not thieves," he said. "No, we're not," I said. "But they have to pay for the things they've taken from us. They took my family from me. And they took my mother's life indirectly. They also took my father's honor and my respect for him. So I'm keeping $150 million. They took your marriage and your career, Bernard. From what I understand, you're a pretty good engineer. You won't be able to go back to that. I'm sorry, but I can't fix it. But I can give you enough money to make it better." He just shook his head. "What did you do while I was working?" I asked him. He smiled. "It felt like the sun was shining on me. I did something to throw them off of our trail," he said. "I drove back into Ohio and mailed my phone to Florida. I mailed yours to California." I smiled. "If Steiner's people can track our phones, not only will they think we're not together, they'll think we're thousands of miles apart." Now back to Kathy's side of the story. My phone rang and I answered it. I had simply picked the phone up out of habit. "Why?" he asked. As soon as I heard the voice, I popped straight up in my chair. "Bernard, I'm so sorry," I whined. "You have to forgive me. Please give me another chance. I swear when we get out of this, it will never happen again." "I'm not sure there is a we anymore," he said. "In all of the time that we've been together, I never cheated on you, Kathy. And you had no reason to go and start up with your boss. What did I ever do to you? I've never ignored you or hit you. I don't even yell at you." "Bernard, it wasn't your fault, honey," I told him. "It was me. When a woman get older, well, I just felt old and bored with our life. I wanted an adventure. It just got out of control. For a while, I had this whole little fantasy world outside of our real life. It was exciting, and it became like a drug. It was hard to put it down. But now the fantasy has taken over my reality, and I've lost control over it." "So you got what you wanted, and now you don't want it anymore?" he said. "That's rough." "No, damn it, Bernard," I yelled. "This isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I wanted at all." "So how long have you been screwing your boss?" he asked. "About a year," I said softly. "But I never enjoyed it. Bernard, he's awful in bed and That makes no sense," he said. "If it was so awful, why would you do it for a year?" "I don't know, Bernard," I whined. "Where are you? How long have you been screwing Adriana? Are you doing it to get revenge on me? Or do you have feelings for her? What are you guys going to do? You have to give it back, Bernard. If you don't bring that flash drive back..." "Give what back?" he asked. "You're not making any sense, Kathy. The first time I saw Adriana was when she slapped the shit out of you in the restaurant. The second time I saw her was the morning this shit all happened. She called me. She called me and told me that if I wanted to know why she had slapped you, I should meet her at your job. So I left work and went there. Once we got there, she told me that she was going to show me what my wife was really like and that I didn't know you at all. I have to admit that since you wouldn't tell me anything, I was curious. So we went up to that office and I saw you. The woman I married with another man's meat in her mouth. You weren't being forced, Kathy. You were doing it on your own. Our marriage ended the second I saw that. I just stood there stunned. I tried to figure out what I had done wrong or why you do something like that. But I couldn't come up with anything. When Adriana started beating on you, it almost felt like she was getting revenge for me. I could never hit you or any woman for that matter, and it just seemed like you deserved to get your butt beaten for betraying me. But I still needed to know why. And you weren't telling me shit. You had lied to me for all of that time, so I can't trust you. The only person I could trust to tell me the truth is Adriana. So I had to help her get out of there. We drove away and found a place where we could talk. She told me everything. She told me that this bullshit you guys are involved in got her mother killed. But I don't know shit about a flash drive. She never mentioned it. So where are you guys now? I asked. There is no us guys, Kathy. She headed east, and I'm headed west to start my life over. I'll send you the divorce papers as soon as I get settled. It was nice knowing you. We had a lot of good years together until you flipped the script. I'm sorry that wasn't enough for you, he said. I almost let him get off of the phone, but one of Steiner's guys passed me a sheet of paper. Bernard, do you think you could get in touch with her if you had to? I asked. I don't think so, he said. When we split up, she went her way and I went mine. Bernard, I'm in trouble, I told him. The people I'm working with are very angry. Adriana took something from them, and they want it back. Well, why don't you give them another BJ, he said. That seems to work for you. Bernard, where are you calling me from? I asked. The payphone in a restaurant I stopped to eat in, he said. I'll be back on the road as soon as I hang up the phone. Will you call me tonight? I asked. There are some things I need to say to you. I'm not making Amy promises, he said. And it won't be from anywhere near where I stop to sleep if I do. I don't trust you anymore. But maybe. I love you, Bernard, I said. For the first time in over 20 years, he didn't say it back. He just hung up. Bernard always said it back, even when he was really pissed at me. My eyes filled with tears, and I didn't give a damn who was listening. I started bawling. The next thing I knew, there was a hand on my shoulder. You did well, Kathy, said Steiner. You have no reason to cry. This is a good moment. How the hell is this good? I screamed. At that moment, I didn't care what happened to me. It felt as if my life was over. It didn't matter if Steiner killed me, or if he just left me to die on my own. Without Bernard, my life meant nothing. Because you got us a lot of information, said Steiner. We now know, or at least can be reasonably sure, that your husband had nothing to do with the theft. Jason's mischievous daughter used him as a distraction. She had him fooled and then threw him away. The really shitty thing is that she used him and didn't even give him a sniff of my money. He has no clue what went on. The only reason he protected her was so she could give him more information about your relationship with Jason. It's good news. Your husband doesn't have to die or be put into storage with Jason's daughter. Maybe the two of you can even work this out. He's so cold and so angry at me, I said. Because he has a right to be, Kathy, he said. You guys have been married for a long time. You cheated on him. Now when he calls you back, how do you know he will? I asked. Oh, he's gonna call you back, said Steiner. I wouldn't have. I'd have blown your brains out through the back of your skull the instant I caught you. And Jason, it would have taken him weeks to die. He'd have been begging me to kill him by the end. But your husband isn't like me. He loves you. Didn't you hear him on the phone? He sounded pathetic. The first thing he wanted to know was why you cheated on him. Trust me, he'll call you back. And when we catch up to Jason's daughter, we're gonna need him to help us catch her. A guy came up behind us. Mr. Steiner, I haven't yet been able to get a trace on the landline he was calling from, but I have both of the cell phones now. For a while, I wasn't able to track them. They must have been in a reception dead zone. But the thing is that from what I overheard, the guy was probably telling the truth. Her phone seems to be heading for Florida, and his looks like it's going towards California. His company does have several plants in California, I said excitedly. His old supervisor is the director of engineering at one of them. He tried to get Bernard to transfer there when he took the job. Steiner nodded his head. We don't need to chase him, he said. We know where he's going and probably where he'll be when he gets there. We also know that he doesn't have the drive and doesn't know shit about what's on it. He's only useful to us after we find her. And to tell you the truth, I think that she just played him. I don't think she gives a damn about him. I think that shit with her calling him baby was another play. I think she used it to get us to think that they were together, so we look for two cars traveling together. She probably screwed him to get him on her side and then dumped him as soon as she didn't need him anymore. And he fell for the whole routine. Hook, line, and sucker. How many Camaros did you idiots see on the freeway? I don't know, Mr. Steiner, said one of the guys. A lot of them. It's a popular car. But we were looking for Camaros and Pontiac Firebird AMs together. Exactly, said Steiner. I'm getting pretty tired of always being one step behind this bitch. Jason, why hasn't your daughter called you? I don't know, Mr. Steiner, said Jason. I'm sure she'll call me. Does she have any other relatives she might call? He asked. Jason was looking green. I think he had the feeling that Steiner might take it out on him if he couldn't find Adriana. Wait, said Jason suddenly. He pulled out his phone, hit one of his contacts, and put the phone on speaker like I had done when I spoke to Bernard. Hey, brother-in-law, said Jason into the phone. Oh, it's you, said the voice on the phone. What do you want? Rick, has Adriana been out to visit you or called you? Asked Jason. I haven't seen Adriana since the funeral, said the voice. Why are you asking? Did you do something to her too? Wasn't it enough that you drove my sister to kill herself? Now you're driving my niece crazy too. I'm calling the police, you a-hole. I'm gonna have them investigate you inside and out until they get to the bottom of this. I knew I should have done it. I shouldn't have turned that little girl down. What are you mumbling about, Rick? Asked Jason. At the funeral, Adriana wanted me to have you killed or do it myself. She was gonna give me half of your business. But shit, I'm retired. I get a full government pension. I don't need to work and I don't need the aggravation. Besides, everybody knows your business is on the verge of bankruptcy. I'll talk to you later, Rick, said Jason. If she calls you, could you ask her to call me? I probably could, said Rick. But that don't mean I will. Jason, I don't like you. I never did. When my sister was alive, I put up with you. I was civil. But my sister is gone now. God rest her soul. So lose my number. That was informative, chuckled Steiner. Jason, I'm getting the idea that except for Kathy, no one really likes you. Right now, I don't like him that much either, I said. I wish I had never met him. Let's get back with Bernard's side of the story. As soon as I turned the phone off, she started laughing. You are so smart, she said. She scooted over even closer to me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Now they're even more confused, she laughed. And while they send all of their people to Florida and California, we'll go somewhere else. She kept saying we. I didn't understand it. What are you thinking? She asked. Now that they have no idea what's going on, this is good time for us to move on with our lives, I said. She looked hurt. This is our lives, dummy, she said. Actually, this is our life. Why are you trying so hard to get away from me? And what do you think you're going to do anyway? Let me guess. You think this is all going to blow over, and you can go back to work next week, huh? Her eyes had filled with tears, and her voice was stressed. Even with her face morphed by her anger, she was beautiful. Adri, I said. She looked at me and backed off even more. Don't Adri me, she said. We're not on vacation, Bernard. We're at war. This is our life now, and this is how it's gonna be until it's over. I'm sorry, but you don't get to just wake up and go back to work like it was a bad dream. And in case you don't realize it, you really don't have to work anymore. Ever. She sat down in the grass and crossed her arms. Come here, I said. She slowly crawled towards me and I hugged her. She melted against me and I began to realize how hard all of this was on her. She snuggled herself against me and sniffled. I'm thinking that we have to hole up somewhere long enough to do something about our cars, I said. She pushed herself away from me. I'm not giving up my Camaro, she said. Adri, nobody said you had to, I told her. I was just thinking that if we had enough money we could get them painted different colors. It's not that your red paint isn't flawless or beautiful, but, Adri, it's like we're driving around in a pack of Skittles. How hard is it to spot a bright red Camaro and a damned near orange Pontiac Firebird AM? We have to be smarter. We have to make it harder for them to spot us. While we're together, I have to at least try to protect you. For some strange reason she laughed at that. Bernard, we're together for good, she said. And okay, we'll get the cars painted. But since it's your idea, you have to pay for it. Adri, we can't use our credit card or bank accounts, I said. I'm sure they're being monitored. Bernard, how much money do you think is in the account I just gave you this morning? She smirked. Good paint jobs could cost around $3,000 for each car, I said. She laughed. Okay, how much money do I have? I asked. The exact same amount that I have, she laughed. Okay, how much is that? I asked again. 850, she said. I left 85 in an account that will be used for expenses and divided between my uncle and his friends. Shit, Adri, we can't even get one car painted for $150, I said. She laughed so hard she almost fell over. Not $150, dummy, she laughed. $850,000? I asked. Shit, no wonder they're chasing us. Bernard, honey, she smiled. You have $150 million. My head exploded. She laughed at my reaction so hard that she fell over in the grass. I guess I can pay for the paint jobs, I said sheepishly. She sat up and wrapped her arms around me. I told you I was going to give you back everything you lost, she smirked. Wait until you see what I'm giving you to replace your wife. I laughed nervously, thinking it was far too early to even think about replacing Kathy, and that I wasn't too sure I wanted her trying to fix me up with someone. I pulled out my iPad and started looking for custom car services and auto painting facilities. I found 3 in Kansas, which was only 300 miles from where we were. So we got back in our cars and headed deeper into the heartland of America. One of the things I found out during the drive was that Adriana was basically a gypsy. She literally loved being on the road. She loved driving. She loved talking on the phone from one car to the other. She had her GPS set to notify her of interesting things along the route we'd chosen. That habit drove me crazy. She was constantly telling me we needed to make a detour. The first couple of times it caught me by surprise. I got worried thinking that something was wrong with her car, and we were going to limo down to road to a service place. The first time we ended up having lunch at the world's largest outdoor grill. It was basically a huge, and I mean huge, pit dug in the ground and covered with grates. It was 10 feet wide and over 100 feet long. There were all kinds of things cooking on it at the same time. I saw ribs, chickens, an entire side of a pig, and too many other things to name, all being grilled. They had a menu and prices on a huge sign next to the grill. Adriana was smiling as she looked at the menu. She started pointing at different things, and an older guy hung on her every word. He brought us a huge wooden plank and put everything she pointed at on it. Then he brought us several different cups of dipping sauces. We bought drinks from a soda machine and sat down on the slope of a hill to eat. There were several musicians playing together, and we sat there on the hill eating barbecue with our fingers while listening to the music. Adri, I began. Have I ever told you that I love it when you call me that? She smiled. I sighed. We really need to go, I said. Why? She asked. We're not in any kind of immediate danger. We have no jobs or responsibilities to get back to. We actually have nothing back there to get back to, and we have all the money we'll ever need. I'm happy. I'm exactly where I want to be. We have no pressing needs. As I looked in her eyes, I could tell she was telling me the truth. Adri, we have a bunch of criminals on our tail. We have no homes, and the people we care about are in danger. The cars we're driving are just pointing an arrow directly at us. There's this thing they call the internet. People can post things to social media, and our whole scam for pointing them away from us goes away. We need to get the cars repainted ASAP, then we can have some downtime. Okay? I said. She stuck her lip out, almost like a bad little girl who was considering whether to obey her parents or do what she wanted and get her butt beaten. Okay, she said. Our detour had already cost us time, so we had to choose between finding a place to stay the night or driving through the night and getting to our destination in the middle of the night. Adriana put her tiny foot down then. It doesn't make any sense for us to get to Kansas in the middle of the night, she said. We have 3 different paint shops to check out, and they're all in different cities around the state. We don't have to rush, and we don't want to get there tired and cranky just to have to wait until they open, she said. So we found a nice-looking, but off-the-beaten-track motel to stop in for the night. It was only 5 miles off of the freeway and boasted both cable TV and 24-hour room service. We need a couple of rooms, I said to the woman behind the counter. 1, said Adriana. The older lady looked us up and down over her glasses and held out her hands in the universal gesture for, look folks, make up your minds. I don't really care. Adriana pulled me over to the side. If something happens during the night, I don't want to have to call you on the phone or run to your room to find you so we can get out of here, she said. It made sense. 1 room, I said, with twin beds. Of course, said the old lady sarcastically. Which one of the beds should I actually put sheets on? Once we got to the room, it all began to go wrong. I'm gonna listen to the recordings, I said. Wait until I get out of the shower, she said. I want to hear them too. I heard the water in the shower go on and a little squeak in her voice before she adjusted the temperature. I couldn't tell if the water was too hot or too cold, but the squeal alone had made me laugh. I had all kinds of jokes to use on her and had just decided which one to start with when the door opened. I opened my mouth to begin my hysterically funny remark and almost choked on it. Adriana had literally taken my breath away. After years of living with a short, average, if slightly chunky, larger-breasted woman, Adriana was a goddess. She wore what had to be the sexiest lingerie I had ever seen. I think they call it a t-shirt. Her long sculptured legs dazzled me. At the same time, her waist was so tiny that I was sure I could get my hands completely around it. Her boobs weren't as large or as heavy as Kathy's, but they were a lot springier, and they moved freely under the thin shirt. The motion of those boobs as she shook her head and rubbed a towel over all of that long wet hair was mesmerizing. But mostly I found myself hating gravity. The bottom of her shirt rested only a couple of inches below her hips. It just seemed impossible for that goddamn t-shirt to stay down. She settled onto one of the beds in that way women have of folding their legs under them that makes it seem like their bones can bend. I was so hypnotized by watching her gather all of that hair into one long, thick braid that I never realized that she was talking to me. Suddenly she realized what was going on and started laughing. This is going to be so much easier than I thought, she laughed. My mom had to wait so long and jump through so many hoops. Do you want to listen now, or what? I asked. I'm hungry, she said. I want some of that 24-hour room service. She unfolded her incredibly long legs and rolled over to the bedside table to get the menu. A few seconds later, she was lying on her tummy, kicking her legs back and forth as she perused the menu. Her damn t-shirt stubbornly refused to even begin to climb her mountainous rump. Sweetheart, what are you in the mood for? She asked. I was sure that she was screwing with me. She had me trapped in this damned hotel room, trying to catch a peek at her hips, and still had the gall to ask me a question like that. She had to be joking. I think I'm gonna try their chili cheese fries, she said. What kind of beer do you like? Well, I don't always drink beer, I began. And since they changed the commercial, I don't drink any beer at all. I agree, she smiled. That new guy is a doofus. So what are we gonna drink? Pepsi, I said. How am I supposed to get you drunk on that? She asked. She smiled and shook her head. She got on the phone and ordered a double order of the fries and a pitcher of Pepsi. Then she got busy doing something on her laptop, and I pulled out my iPad and started looking at samples of work by the 3 paint shops. I was pretty sure that I'd picked out the one I wanted when the knock came at the door. She looked over her shoulder at me, and I felt like I was falling off of a cliff. Her eyes were that deep. And then she said something really romantic. Bernard, you dummy, get the door. I don't have any clothes on, she said. I got up and opened the door, but made sure the guy bringing the food couldn't see in. I gave him a tin as a tip and closed the door. As soon as she smelled the steaming plate of fries, her long fingers danced across her keyboard like lightning, and she clambered off of the bed and over to me. I saw a flash of rounded booty as she awkwardly threw her legs towards the floor and ran over to me. She inspected the plate by looking at it from every angle, and then whipped out her phone and took a picture of it. Then she took a deep breath, inhaling the mingled scents of cheese and chili. She dipped her finger into the mess and whipped it back. Shit, that's hot, she said. She whipped her finger back and forth in the air to cool it off, and then looked at me. Kiss it, she said, sticking that plump bottom lip out and holding the finger in my face. I figured I had nothing to lose, so I did. Her face erupted in a smile. None, she said. That's why I couldn't go to the door. I was totally confused. Bernard, she laughed. You really do have to step your game up, or you're always going to be confused. I must have missed something, I said. You didn't miss anything, she grinned. Ever since I came out of the shower, you've been staring at me. But don't worry, honey, you're supposed to. You've been looking at my butt like it was gonna disappear, and you wanted to memorize every line of it. It's not going anywhere. At least not anywhere away from you. I went into shock. In my day, girls didn't talk like that. You were just wondering what my panties looked like, she said. Well, now you know. I'm not wearing any. But that's for you, not some delivery geek. I went further into shock, and she laughed, realizing it. Bernard, do you know what really turns me on? She asked. Before I got my tongue to work, she answered her own question. It's when you look into my eyes and get that blank look on your face, she said. It makes me feel like you think I'm so beautiful that you can't think. Any goofball can get excited over a girl's body, but when you like her eyes or her smile, it's another matter. I'm married, I blurted out. You're done with her, she smirked. I was there when you told her you wanted a divorce, remember? Why? I mumbled. Bernard, women are just quicker to recognize and deal with emotional situations, she said. I've already recognized things that you have yet to figure out, like the fact that you are just as crazy about me as I am about you. The difference is that while you're still trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, exactly what is going on? I asked. Remember the story about how my mother and father got together? She asked. Well, throw in a bunch of criminals, a really stupid ex-wife, and some really cool cars, and basically you've got us. Except our ending will be a much happier one. I scratched my head. Keep working on it, honey, she said in a condescending tone. You'll figure it out. Now come on. Those fries aren't going to eat themselves. We ended up lying side by side on the bed, sharing the fries and a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi, letting the familiar banter fill the room. We fell asleep soon. I woke up the next morning with someone knocking on the door. I was wearing only my boxers and had my arms wrapped around roughly 120 pounds of chocolate-haired angel. Her face was buried in my chest, and she was definitely snoring. Last call for breakfast orders, yelled someone from outside of the door. I was just about to try to get up and head for the door when those incredible eyes popped open. Don't even think about it, she hissed. We're good, she yelled over her shoulder, then pulled me even closer to her, if that was possible, and reclosed her eyes. But what about? I asked. They'll still be open in the afternoon, she mumbled. This is our vacation? I supplied, but it didn't seem right. Chance to unwind from all of the stress and drama of the past couple of days? That's not exactly it, she said. You'll figure it out eventually. You're pretty smart. Besides being comfortable. Now go back to sleep. Now let's check the story from Kathy's side. I felt empty and angry at the same time. It was as if I could feel my life slipping away from me. My job was taking over more and more of my waking hours, and not by choice. Last night had been the worst night of my life. All I'd wanted to do was go home and wait for Bernard to call me. I had to talk to him alone. I needed to find out what I had to do to get him back. There was no way I was getting divorced. Bernard was the best thing to ever happen to me. Why hadn't I realized it before? Anyway, there I was getting ready for a night of crying in my beer while I waited for my husband to call when someone knocked at my door. I went to the door and found Jason, or what was left of him, standing there. He looked like he was about to burst into tears at any moment. I offered him a beer. Not because I wanted to, but what choice did I have? He poured out his soul to me. For the last few weeks, he'd been barely holding it together. He figured that his biggest mistake had been signing on with Steiner. In his mind, he'd only done it to save his company and his employees. He'd seen it as making a deal with the devil, but for a good cause. In the movies, when the hero makes a deal but does it for a really good reason, it all works out in the end. In real life, not so much. The problem was that he really couldn't see beyond his line of bullshit. Jason may have thought his motives were totally altruistic, but in reality, he was just kicking the can downstream. Jason figured that if he could just hold out for a few years, Adriana would inherit the company. She would either solve the company's financial problems, or the company's demise would be her problem. Jason hated the idea of being the Darrow who had lost the family business so badly that he wanted to have that shame blamed on his daughter instead. The problem was that Adriana liked what she did. She didn't really care as much about the engineering aspect of her job as much as she did traveling around the world and meeting new people. Adriana was always talking to her mother about the places she'd seen and the things she'd done. It sometimes seemed as if she was looking for something or someone. It came as a complete surprise to Jason, just after his deal with Steiner, that when he asked her to come home and help him with the family business, she turned him down flat. Jason couldn't figure out what was worse, having his wife find out that something crooked was going on in the business, or having to put her in that place where she finally died. He spent a half hour explaining to me the difference between all of the facilities she's been in over the years and the last one. I guess I'd really never given it much thought. Most of the places he'd sent his wife to were nursing homes or critical care facilities. He'd only sent her to them because her various medical issues required around-the-clock care that he couldn't give her himself. In each of those facilities, the end goal was to get her well enough to come home and take her place in his life. In most of those places, she was too ill or too out of it mentally to know what was going on. But that last one had been awful. He'd had her locked up to save her life. There was no telling what Steiner could have had done to her. But truthfully, you can't cage some birds. Some birds just have to be able to fly free. The captivity had killed her. The one good thing out of the entire situation was that it had brought Adriana home. But Jason noticed from the beginning that his daughter was no longer the pretty little girl that he had raised. Adriana had grown into a beautiful, willful woman that wanted almost nothing to do with her father. But at least she'd come right in and started making a place for herself in the business. She'd come in a few days after her mom's funeral and started working her way up from the bottom. But now it seemed as if she'd been fooling Jason since the beginning. She'd come just to steal Steiner's money, and if they didn't find her and get it back, Jason, more than likely, would be the one who had to pay for it. I felt so sorry for him. In a lot of ways, he was a really good man. He was just over his head. We ended up having sex in the bed I shared with my husband. It was pity sex, and as usual, it was awful, but it was better than being alone. After it was over and Jason lay there beside me snoring, all I felt was regret. The sex wasn't fulfilling and I felt guilty. I just wanted it all to end. I looked at the illuminated numbers of the clock on the dresser and wondered what Bernard was doing. I was glad that Bernard wasn't there to see that I had betrayed him again. I felt even sorrier for Bernard than I did for Jason. It just seemed as if everyone, me included, took advantage of Bernard. First, I'd betrayed him by having sex with Jason. Then Jason's crazy-ass daughter had used him as a distraction in her scheme to steal Steiner's money. None could figure out how she even knew about the money, much less how she'd managed to steal it. Even Steiner's guys were sure that Adriana hadn't actually stolen the money. She'd just stolen the flash drive. Adriana was an engineer, not a financial expert. They were all convinced that she had taken the money as some sort of revenge against Jason for his part in her mother's death. She had found out about Jason and me and had decided that my punishment would be losing my husband. Steiner's men had surmised that she had probably seduced Bernard and made him an unwitting pawn in her plan. Jason wasn't so sure. He told me something that scared the shit out of me. He told me that the way his daughter was acting reminded him of her mother years before. She'd been a teenager when he was in his 20s. She'd been convinced that not only would they be together, they'd end up married. She'd been so single-minded that she'd eventually hooked him. Adriana was a much older, more sophisticated woman than her mother had been, but she looked at Bernard that same way. For most of her life, Adriana had been able to take or leave men. Jason had sometimes wondered if his daughter was gay. She dated and occasionally had sex with men, but not one had ever caught her fancy. Jason was sure that if Adriana had wanted something from Bernard, she'd be able to get it. My husband was putty in her hands. And out of everyone theorizing about the connection, Jason was pretty sure that the two of them were still together. He hadn't told anyone except me, but despite all of the evidence to the contrary, was sure that once again his daughter had managed to distract everyone watching her. I hoped that he was wrong. The possibility of my husband getting between those long legs filled me with dread. If Jason was right, I'd never have a chance to get Bernard back. Steiner was in a frenzy. He'd brought in all kinds of PIs, trackers, and bounty hunters. None of them had been able to as much as get a sniff of them. He'd even brought in a famous bounty hunter from TV. Not only had the man's price been astronomical, but he'd made even less progress than the other guys. And the smell of bleach from his overly dyed blonde hair had the entire office stinking. One thing that had Steiner pissed was when he tried to hire a PI that had been recommended by several sources as the best in the business. He called the agency and set up a meeting with the investigator. Her name was Sarah Price. She showed up in person, along with a sandy blonde-haired guy who turned out to be her husband. They made quite a pair. She was tall and thin, but well-built. Her strawberry blonde hair was long and thick. The tiny square glasses that perched on her nose made her look less like a high-priced PI and more like the world's sexiest librarian. Her husband seemed to spend most of his time looking around the room at the furniture and decorations. Her words when she did speak were very businesslike, and to a man like Steiner, insulting. Mr. Steiner, I believe that's what you're calling yourself now. We seem to have a misunderstanding. I don't take the kind of work you're offering. I don't understand, Ms. Price, he said. I was told that among private detectives you're among the very best. My good friend, the mayor of our fair city told me that you can find anyone. She wasn't impressed or intimidated by his name-dropping. Her eyes seemed to harden, but her husband continued to smile as he looked around the room. The mayor of your fine city is kind of thick, she said, and also kind of myopic. I don't think he has any idea of what you really do for a living. I also doubt that he can see where the money you donate to his various charities and projects comes from. I, on the other hand, take considerable interest in who I work for. What is that supposed to mean? Asked Steiner. As the tone of his voice changed, the three huge men in the office stood up. It means I'd never work for you, said Sarah evenly, no matter how much money you offered. Sarah stood up to leave and found the door blocked by the three gorillas. Her husband suddenly seemed to stand up and appear next to her. His movements were so smooth and precise that it almost seemed like he just appeared there. The gorillas smiled at him. He was far smaller than any of them. Is that a quarter? He asked, bending forward and reaching for the ground. I'm still trying to figure out the rest of what happened. At first I thought he had stumbled trying to pick it up, but as his foot came up to arrest his fall, it caught the biggest of the gorillas under his chin. The man staggered backwards, clutching his throat, and fell against one of his friends. The remaining gorilla was smarter. He stepped back to assess the situation. He wasn't sure if it had been accidental or not. He reached into his jacket and actually felt the grip of his gun before he heard a loud click right in his ear. He instinctively stopped moving at the same time. He felt the cold barrel of a gun against the side of his head. The second gorilla had untangled himself from his choking friend and took a swing at the still smiling smaller man, who ducked under the swing almost casually and then appeared to look at his watch. The movement threw his elbow into the larger man's solar plexus and paralyzed his diaphragms. He tried but found himself unable to breathe. Hey, sorry about that, said the smaller man. I'm kind of clumsy sometimes. The bigger man was still choking and clutching his chest. The man with the gun to his head spoke calmly. I've seen that before. It's called drunken monkey kung fu. Chris, if you're done playing with your friends, we really need to go, said Sarah calmly. Chris shrugged his shoulders and slapped the choking man on his back. He took in a huge gasp of air and sat down in the closest chair. Sarah put her gun back in her purse and walked out of the office with her husband. You really didn't need that cannon, he said. You would have enjoyed what I had planned for the third guy. It was really poetic. It would have been a pattern. The first guy's throat, the second guy's chest, the third guy's. Even as Chris spoke, the third guy grabbed his crotch involuntarily. Steiner was even more pissed. I should fire all of you, he screamed. You three are absolutely useless. The two of you got your butt kicked by a guy who looks like a teenage surfer dude. And he did it without even raising a sweat. It looked like he did it accidentally while he was stumbling and falling all over the goddamned place. How does that work? The two gorillas that Chris had taken out shrugged their shoulders. It was clear that neither of them wanted any part of Chris ever again. And Wally, you're supposed to be the smart one, but you let a chick get the drop on you. Didn't anybody check her goddamned purse? She walked in here with a bazooka and stuck it right next to Wally's head, while he was discussing chop sake styles with her husband. You guys are just… Mr. Steiner, I have an idea, I said, interrupting his rant. All three of the gorillas shot me looks of gratitude. What's up, Kathy? He asked. First off, we need to make a deal, I said. What are you talking about? He asked. What kind of deal? Are you after my money too, Kathy? Nope, I said, no money involved. But you're a man of your word, so I want your promise that no matter what happens, my husband is safe. He comes out of this without so much as a scratch. Kathy, I don't intend to hurt anyone here, he smiled. I held up my hands. I never said you would, sir. Even though you'd have a perfect right to do so. A hell of a lot of money was stolen from you. We need to get it back before anyone knows it happened, and we need to make an example out of someone so it never happens again. I just don't want my husband to be that example. He smiled. What about poor Jason's daughter? He asked. Screw her, I said. I'll bet your husband already did, said one of the gorillas. Steiner silenced him with a glance. Kathy, I got all kinds of trackers and hunters looking for them. These are pros. If you got an idea, spill it. I give you my word not to hurt your hubby. Follow me, I said. We walked out into the office. I went straight over to the desk of one of our junior accountants. As we neared his desk, I noticed that the screen on his desktop computer changed. Hi, Mrs. Quarry, he said nervously. What can I do for you? Get up, Malcolm, I said. I need your computer. You have a computer in your office, don't you? He asked. Malcolm, I said more firmly. You know you aren't my boss, he said angrily. You're Mr. Darrow's secretary or his assistant, not an actual manager or anything. Malcolm, that was a very mean and very stupid thing to say, I said. No one cares about your hidden collection of spicy videos, or all of the online shopping and gaming you do. In fact, something you do is going to help us so much that you might have gotten a raise out of this. But that won't happen now. Huh, he said stupidly. Wally, could you? I asked. He looked at Steiner, who nodded. At the first sign of the nod, Wally moved. His movements weren't effortless and gliding like Sarah's husband, Chris. He was more like a bulldozer. He knocked 2 chairs out of the way and grabbed Malcolm by his neck and flung him out of the chair and over his desk, where he landed on the floor like a broken toy. Thank you, Wally, I said. He nodded and smiled. I sat down in front of Malcolm's computer. Gentlemen, I have no idea how good of an accountant Malcolm is or was, but he had a hell of a crush on Adriana. Adriana and I hated the shit out of each other, as you all know, but she got along with everyone in the office except me. That included some of the people here that I've worked with for years and speak to on very friendly terms on a daily basis. A week or so ago, some of the women in the office were laughing because Malcolm here was practically stalking Adriana. One of them told me that he commented and posted on everything she put on her Facebook page. I hit a couple of keys, and we saw all of the pages that Malcolm had opened on the computer. The spreadsheet he had up was only a shield for his Facebook app and several other web pages. And sure enough, Malcolm had Adriana's page open. She'd posted several photos a few hours before. Son of a bitch, said Wally. Can we track her from this? We can't, but one of Mr. Steiner's computer trackers probably can, I said. Steiner smiled at me then. Good job, Kathy, he said. I'll get one of the geeks right on it. Dear listeners, the next part will be out in a few minutes. Meanwhile, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.